right, we're ready.
Okay.
All right. We will call this meeting to order, December 4th, meeting of the Glendale-River Hills School District Board. I will start with a roll call. Assistant Clerk Chris Robinson. Here. Treasurer Karen Cronwell. Here. Vice President Daniel Bailey.
Here.
Clerk Katie Evans.
Here.
And President.
Carla Pennington Bronsted here.
All right, moving on to item 1C, the Pledge of Allegiance. If you wish, you may stand at this time to pledge allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Should I still be using my mic, Diane? Or is it?
Yeah, try to.
All right, item 1D, agenda approval. Is there a motion?
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving on to item 1E, approval of board meeting minutes for November 2024.
I move to approve the board meeting minutes for November 2024. Second.
Any discussion? Yes, ma'am.
I sort of have a general comment about them, so if this is not, these minutes were just like extremely scant, so I started like just looking at other districts' minutes to kind of understand if we're like in the norm or if we're doing more or less, and I would like to see us maybe do a little bit more if it's not too burdensome, like for example, I think we note who makes comments or who does presentations. I've noticed in some minutes you can't, like, people will say presentation uploaded to Board Docs, or there's a presentation attached. Okay. So people know that there would be like additional information. For public comments, for example, received by Mr. W. Martin, like if it's not too burdensome, I would suggest saying like made comments about the referendum passing and suggested something, like just very general, not like so substantive, but to give someone an idea. We could do the same thing around board meeting debrief if board members have updates, if they're sharing information about events or are lauding something, you know, our school or students are doing. So I was just like, I mean, even the where is it? Our legislative update, right? That tells me nothing. So I feel like even just saying like you and Katie gave us WISA update, a couple highlights if you want. Carla summarized WASB workshop that several members attended on advocacy, and we'll, you know, like I just think I would want to be able to understand the gist of what was discussed if I couldn't watch the whole meeting. So it's just a suggestion.
Question then.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on you putting the minutes together?
Well, I'm not the, well,
Would it be the clerk? I mean, anyone can draft them, right?
okay, yeah.
Or,
I don't currently draft them, so.
yeah, I mean, I think you put them together, right? And I think she's following the model Karen used, right? But if they're gonna be more substantive, it might be.
Well,
I
I
know
could
what you
share
did.
I could share some examples that I found with you so that you could see, and if it seems like it's unduly burdensome, then.
Well, it would be helpful just because.
Yeah, she's monitoring a lot.
Oh, to have someone else do it, okay.
Just for those spots that we don't have.
Oh, yeah, okay. Or add them when we review the minutes afterwards, possibly. Okay, sure.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on you doing them since you're the
I
clerk?
absolutely do not have the time or capacity to do
Yeah.
that right now,
Yeah.
but
Okay, then,
the clerkship honestly has proven to be a lot more time than I knew it was gonna be, so.
maybe the assistant clerk.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll be
Because
glad.
they're,
to-
or.
Yeah.
because that would be, what I worry about is if we're looking for substance, Diana may not be able to
judge us directly what is important to us to see in the
Mhm.
minutes. Whereas I think if one of the board members was doing them, it would be great if you're willing, Chris,
Okay.
then, you know, we would be directing our comments to Chris and
Yeah.
figuring that out as a board, what we
Maybe
think
we
is
try it
important.
for next month and I can send you some of the examples and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. I just,
Yeah, I think that templates would be
Yeah.
super informative, right?
yeah, it's not much more. It's like the Pledge of Allegiance was recited, like, okay, you know, things like that. So presented, here's the presentation. Okay. That's all. Thank you for considering.
Are you wishing to postpone?
No, no.
All right, then let's take a vote on, thank you for those comments, it's helpful. And Chris, thank you for being willing to step up. It's a simple solution. I'm always asking people to do things. No, I didn't volunteer. All right, all in favor of approving these minutes? Aye. Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Moving on to item 1F, a meeting grounding, and Ms. Karen Cronwell has agreed to lead a grounding today.
All right, y'all. I would just invite you to take a moment to like sit down, get comfortable. We're all sitting already, so just truly feel comfortable in your seat. Roll the day off your shoulders. We all showed up today, which is magnificent because we have a common vision, right? Of a really empowered school district. And so I just want to take a moment of gratitude. By the way, it is the quickest way to rewire your brain. It is scientifically proven. To spend some time in gratitude every day. And so I would just, if you're interested in doing it, invite you to close your eyes, inhale and lengthen your spine. Take a beautiful deep breath. Pause for just a moment. And exhale. Take another large inhale. And exhale. And in this next moment, just invite yourself to picture something that you feel true gratitude for. Just picture it, and as you inhale, let it brighten in your brain. Pause and focus, and exhale. And let us enjoy the rest of the meeting and be present.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Karen. My gratitude is right here, this collection of people. Amazing. All right, on to item 2A, public comments. At this time, we would be happy to hear from visitors who may wish to speak on any non-agenda items. Anyone online?
Nope.
All right, that did not take 10 minutes. Outstanding. Moving on to the meat of our meeting. Item 3, our strategic pillar is whole child growth and success, and we're going to begin with a trimester 1 student data review. And as we head into this next hour, probably hour and 20 minutes of heavy data, I would like to ground us in a more practical idea. We're getting a lot of information today as a board. This is new. We have a new cohesive team leading this effort. We're building new plans, we're building new models. And so I would encourage all of us who are here to slow down, move into a space of deep listening with a really open mind, less about finding our next question and more about seeing and hearing what's presented to us. And starting on that learning curve that we're all going to be on. And imagining what this journey is going to look for us as learners and how we're going to model learning for students and families in our district as we come up the curve on understanding all this stuff. So that's where I'm going to try to put my headspace, and I would invite us to hold off on questions until the presenters invite questions unless it's urgent. Okay.
Just one question. To you. So we have 45 minutes budgeted for 2 items,
Yes.
and you want me to time keep. How much time do you want to allocate to this first item?
What do you think?
I would say you probably want to allocate 20 minutes to this first item, 20 to 30 minutes for the first item.
We have a little extra time from
Yeah.
the beginning of the meeting. All right,
All right, so school board policy 2623 states that the board shall assess student achievement and needs in all areas of the curriculum in order to determine the progress of students and to assist them in attaining district goals. I've invited our building level administrators to update the board on the student assessment data for trimester 1. In addition to the student assessment data, information from our administrative work in terms of our calibration of walkthroughs will also be shared. Okay, so I will turn things over to Ryan Kreger, Associate Principal at Parkway Elementary.
All right, so there's gonna be a lot of data points on there. I'm not gonna read through everything, but I will give you some time, obviously, just to peek at it and look at it as you wish. But the first one that we are looking at is our STAR literacy. That's our screener that is given 3 times a year. So this first slide is our STAR literacy scores in the fall for K-5 and first grade. And so that first column is the 23-24 fall proficiency percentages, and our second column is that 24-25 fall proficiency. And so we're really looking at where students are coming into us in the fall. And so you'll see then that change plus or minus on the right-hand column. And so this is broken down by demographics, as you can see on the left. So we had overall some really great changes. You will see that we had a drop in our efficiencies for our Hispanic and Latino students and for our economic status students as well. But then some overall growth that are good to highlight there. We had a 15% gain for our Black and African American students, a 9.7% gain for our white students. ELL students were a plus 25%. Please note that obviously some of these are very small amount of students as well. You're looking at some of that data.
Is the percentage number telling us what percentage of our students met the proficiency standard?
Correct. Our proficient. Yep.
And it was urgent.
Yep.
Okay, well, I sort of.
yeah, please feel free. Exercise your judgment in whether it's urgent.
Well, I've been having I'm trying to grasp, so is it K-5 and first grade students are grouped together? Cause it says K-5 and first, so.
Yeah, so our early lit STAR is for K-5 students and first grade students. And so
Okay.
this is grouping of those two students.
Okay, so those are those two, and then this is, are they both K-5 first? So this is K-5 in first grade and 23 and 24, and then this is K-5 and we're actually looking at different
Cohorts,
students.
correct.
So how can you measure change of different students?
It's just kind of giving us a sample of where they're coming in at and what that percentage is that they're coming in at for the start of each year. But you're right, we're not comparing cohorts at all.
So how do you process this information then? Like, no, let's do the question. I'll save it for later. I don't, okay. Sorry.
If I can just add, we look at cohort data later in the presentation, and
Yeah.
then we get after that. So really what we're looking at in here is where are students coming in at the start of the year, because this is our baseline data that we're trying to move. So if we're looking at those proficiency rates and we're looking at moving our overall trajectory on our state report card, we're gonna be looking at sort of what is that large amount of movement into the category of proficiency. So this is a very wide lens, and as we work through the data, you'll
Okay.
see it starts to get more narrow.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. Thank you.
All right, looking at our STAR data, then this is looking at the exact same thing, only for our second and third grade, so for our STAR literacy data. Same thing, 23 and 24 is that first column, 24 and 25 is that second column, so you're seeing where students are starting that school year at proficiency levels. And same with that change, plus minus on the right-hand side. The next slide is talking about our students that are receiving intervention and support from our coaches and interventionists. So for literacy, That percentage, that first one is 11% of our student body is receiving tier 3 intervention from our interventionists and coaches. And then of those 11%, that ethnicity percentages are in the next column, right? So 59% of those students are Black and African American, 22% are white, 2 or more races, 4% Asian, and 9% Hispanic. And then out of that 11%, 44% are males, 56% are females. And then our outcomes, right? 87% of those students are making progress towards those goals that they're working on in intervention, and 13 are not. Obviously, we want to see growth in everybody, right? And sometimes that 13% could mean there's some underlying factors that they're not growing. We also do more than one tier 3 intervention cycles, right? So this is our first tier 3 intervention cycle. If the student isn't making progress, that intervention may change, the duration of the intervention may change. Certain things can happen in that second, that time that we have those students. So it's not that we're just giving up on those 13 right now. We make changes and we try something new. Yeah.
What are the parameters for making progress? Is it trimester where they start and how close they get to goals at the end of that?
Yeah, so they're weekly monitored on their goals for on what they are working for in tier 3 intervention. And then we look at that data weekly with coaches. And so we look at the 25th percentile scoring mark, and we try to look at progress towards that as we're going through. Oftentimes you'll see a lot of students that are making like either slow progress, but like it's trajected in a positive way. Sometimes you'll see really scattered data that's kind of all over the place, and that can be hard to interpret. And sometimes you just see consistent, like they are baselining right here for whatever reason, right? In those 3 ways, we can try to, maneuver our way through what the next round of intervention might be.
And do demographics, like, do you see any correlation between a percentage of demographics represented in the 11% and the 87-13, or do you look at that? So like, what's the breakdown of the 87% making progress versus 13%?
Oh, like who of those 87% students are?
Right, like, are you seeing
don't-
a disparity or
I don't think I can answer that. I don't know. I have to look further into that.
That's okay, just curious.
Because it may not be that many students.
That's
Right.
not knowing the, not, yeah.
It's like less than 50 students, right?
Because we're like close to 500 student body.
Yeah, so it's a very small.
Okay,
number.
okay.
Very small.
Okay.
All right, and now switching our focus into the areas of math, you will see that we're looking at the same type of like tiered mark in the 23-24 fall proficiency and the 24-25. You will see that we have a negative change within our math, and so that is something that we've talked about within our school building quite a bit. You also notice, and Anna made this point with our staff, which is really important to note, like the literacy skills often build upon each other, and sometimes math can be a little bit more scattered within their skills, and that might be a reason why we aren't seeing some consistent levels of growth as incoming students in each of the fall. But these are numbers that are obviously things that we continue to look at, and why aren't kids retaining some of the information happening from the year prior to that next fall? Because they are not retaining as much as they are in literacy. And then the same goes to our interventions in math. 5% of our student body are in tier 3 interventions. 80% of those students are Black or African American, 12% are white, 8 identified with 2 or more races, 44% are male, and 56% are female, so exactly the same as literacy. And then 76% of our students in intervention are making progress, 20% are not making progress, and 2% are insufficient data. That typically tells us that we have students that are either missing too many days of school, coming to intervention for whatever reason. And so there's not enough data points to tell you if we're making progress or not. Now we're looking kind of more along the lines of that cohort. And so this is proficiency numbers. So you're going to see the first number is the amount of students within that grade level. The second number is the percentage of students that are proficient in ELA or in math. And so, for example, the class of 2031, which is crazy to say, but it is the first grade group. We had 83 students in first grade, 78% were proficient in ELA. And then the next year, I should say 24-25. I thought we changed that, is 103 students. And 76% were proficient in ELA the next year.
And that's second grade, that's what the first.
Correct, yeah, first and second grade, yeah, so you kind of see that cohort move. You're gonna see more of that when Willie presents for Glendale, you'll see kind of even more of a progression.
Oh, I just figured it out.
Yeah.
This is year over year.
Yep.
Got it.
Same group.
So now we're looking more at our essential standards, and I know we've talked about this before, but our classroom grades have identified 2 to 3 essential standards in literacy and math that we're really focusing our energy towards, and making sure that we're collecting a lot of data around. And so you will see the standard is in that last column. The numbers don't mean much to you besides the number of, that's basically the coding for the standard. But the first number does. So anything with a first means first grade, anything with second is second grade, anything with third is third grade. And then you'll see that fall proficiency, and this is just from last year's data. So you'll see the fall proficiency rate, for instance, the first one of OAC6 is 18% of the students in first grade were proficient in that standard in the fall, up to 77% were proficient in that standard in the spring. What that tells us is if we are focusing our energy and focusing our attention towards a certain amount of standards, that we can make really great growth within our students. And so you'll see on the right-hand side of that growth. Obviously, we want those growth numbers to continue to be bigger and bigger, but this was the first year that we've picked those essential standards. And to be fair, we weren't working within those essential standards until January probably of last year, because it took us 3 to 4 months to identify what they were. And so really it was from January to May where we were focusing through those essential standards within our teaching practices. You'll see the next slides are around our STAR assessment, which is, like I said, given that 3 times a year, fall, winter, and spring. These are, so you'll see the grade levels in our very first column. And this is for early lit, so that's just K5 first and second. And then the second column is the essential standard that is identified, and we tried to track that data around essential standards. And then so you will see in the fall of 2024, so this is our baseline data for this year, which makes sense because these students haven't been given instruction around these essential standards. You'll see a lot of our students are either that beginning or developing, with not as many in secure, and that's because they just haven't been in that grade. And so they are getting that instruction, going through that rigor right now. And in winter, when we do this again, you'll see the percentages shift to the right, and in the spring, they'll even shift more to the right.
What's going on with the 20 out of 118 in second grade?
So, yeah, so start early lit is the K5 and first grade. There's a trigger essentially that goes from start early lit to start reading. And so if you don't pass that trigger point in the assessment, it just puts you in the start early lit. So those our students are typically, yes, start early students. Yeah.
2 to 3.
Yep. And then the next slide is talking about our STAR reading scores. So same thing, second and third grade, those are essential standards. And then you'll see the beginning, developing, and secure for our fall 2024. What you're going to notice here a little bit more is you're going to see a lot more students in our developing and secure, right? Which is great. That means that they're, because like we talked about, those literacy skills are building upon each other, right? You're seeing some students coming in with some really high skill level. And what that tells our instructors, and just talk to our staff about this on Monday, is that a lot of your students that are coming into our classroom are ready for even more rigor, right? They're ready to be pushed. 58% of our students already know, RF's 3.3. So now they're expecting more and more rigor within our instruction. And that's a great thing. That's a great way to start, because then it gives us that flexibility to, yes, we still have to focus our efforts around that 27%, but that's telling you that 40% of our students are ready for more rigor.
So can I ask an annoying question?
Mhm.
So I count 102 second graders doing the reading test and 20 second graders, which makes 122. Does that tell me that 4 of them took both the
Yes.
reading and the early learners? Okay,
Yep.
great.
little bit harder to see on the board, but this is the same idea with our STAR math. So this is our first grade, second grade, and third grade essential standards. And then those fall scores for where they are beginning, developing, and secure.
Can we ask some questions?
Of course.
Comes to behavior. This
Yeah, I
seems
want to
like
give
a
you
good
time to think
place.
about, yeah.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot on that paper.
Lauren?
So there's kind of a disturbing trend without understanding the size of the cohort with a consistent decrease in skill set with our Hispanic and Latino children. So how are we analyzing that data and what are we doing about it?
Yeah, so that would be the work that we continuously do within our weekly professional learning teams, right? And so STAR data is great in the sense it gives you a broad sense of where students are within our essential standards, but our common formative assessments that we're doing within our classroom dive deeper into exactly what those skills are that we're trying to help with our students. And they can give us a little bit more precise meaning to that data, because with STAR, it just gives you a number of either beginning, developing, or secure. Where if we're looking at specific data that's happening within our classrooms, it gives us a little bit better idea of that. So of what those students are doing, at least within our classroom. So the idea would be is that we're going to continue to look at our common formative assessments that are happening within our classroom instruction. And then if we're noticing some of those same trends happening, then adjusting, right, our instruction or having conversations about what's happening within our classrooms.
I have to follow up just in general. So I think those of us who do work in education also know that at times these tests have unpredictable outcomes that would not be consistent with, for instance, classroom performance. Do we see any data trends or any issues or hiccups within this data set that made you go, with regards to particular students that may have skewed this a little bit?
Yeah, when you dive deeper into like individual students, there are definitely some aha moments. You're right? We're giving this test one day. Lots of things can happen in a student's life between when they wake up and when they are taking that assessment within our group. So we do notice often when we're looking at this, like that didn't work. Our teachers and our interventionists that help with that assessment are really great about noticing those, because we are able to see those scores pretty quickly and we're like, that doesn't seem right? And then we give that student another chance, whether it's a different day, another week, whatever it might be, just an opportunity to really demonstrate exactly what they're proficient in or not. But you're right. You know.
Oh, so you can retake?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Chris?
Just a contextual question. So unless someone's IEP says differently, the whole class tests together?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And it's all computer based.
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay.
Have anything for them?
Danielle?
Well, so we're looking at this decrease in math proficiency across all levels. Oh, sorry. Looking at the decrease in math proficiency across all the levels. How are you guys thinking about that? Like, we feel good about the curriculum, or, you know, what are some of the hot takes on that piece? If you have them yet, I don't know, maybe you don't.
I mean, I can speak from some of my observations, right? And this was data, this isn't like new data that's like screaming at us for the first time. Like some of our math data last year was already kind of trending towards that of like, what's happening? Why are we not seeing the growth we want to see? And so part of the work that we've done this year in Guiding Coalition, we mentioned this is focusing our work around those essential standards in Number Corner, which is a key element to their student's day. And so there's been specific professional development happening in Number Corner, trying to figure out better ways to give our students more access to those essential standards throughout the day, rather than just that 45 to 60-minute math block. How can we incorporate that essential standard in morning meeting? Our allied arts teachers are in those meetings, and so they're identifying what those essential standards are in math, and how can they do small little things here and there to talk about counting or skip counting or whatever that essential standard might be. So that's the way we're kind of tackling it right now. As we continue to look at the growth charts, I think for this year, when it comes to math, hopefully we see more growth than we saw last year, because we're doing some intentional work around that. If not, we gotta go back to the drawing board. We gotta think about what's happening, why is it happening, and what do we gotta do to change it.
Could I add one thing too, that we also added win time for math as well this year
Oh,
to
thank you.
provide
Yeah.
opportunities for reteaching in math. We did not have that last year, so that's, it's a 30-minute block that allows teachers to meet with small groups around math and do some reteaching on the essentials.
At both schools?
At Parkway,
At Parkway.
because they have the larger block over
Oh,
here.
right.
Yeah.
Last year we did 2 weeks of ELA win, 2 weeks of math win.
Which, yeah.
What our staff realized is that oftentimes if you have breaks or whatever's happening, there's a huge chunk of time between students receiving some really good tier 2 intervention in math or ELA. For like 4 weeks, they're getting this break, right? And so what we wanted to do is give them 30 minutes each a day of math win and ELA win. So now students are receiving both of those.
Is there time for a couple more questions from you?
There is, what,
Those
do you wanna allocate the additional time?
From public comment.
Sure, yeah, thank you. A question mark went off in my mind, and so I just shared this as an area of curiosity for me. And I don't know if the numbers are meaningful because the cohorts are so small, but I noticed you have fewer students in math tier 3 interventions. And I wonder if there's a correlation between that and the lower math number. I mean, I don't know how that works. Does that raise questions about whether you should be providing more intervention at higher levels for more of your students?
It's a great question. One of the logistical answers to that is that we have 3 literacy coaches and 2 math coaches. So there's a little bit of discrepancy there in the amount of students they can see.
Yeah.
But your question is important in the sense, is there a way to provide more support for students? For sure.
Yeah. And then what I've put in my notes here and what I'm thinking about, and I just want to make sure I'm reading this right. I mean, STAR tests, you're giving them 3 times a year. So there is an expectation that the first tests are going to have lower numbers, right? Because they're testing what you're going to be teaching, not what you've already taught. So I'm not panicking over this data. It's not until we see the second and third test that we have a feel for what this tells us about what's happening in our schoolhouses.
Yeah, we would expect a 5-year-old in K5 who hasn't received the K5 curriculum to be a beginning in the fall.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what I start to think about is like, bias in testing. I mean, what this may show us this may tell us more about what's happening in households and about access to learning at home during the summer than it tells us about what's happening in our schoolhouses, right? Am I reading that right?
I think you're bringing up a really good point, and it's a point we had as a discussion, as an administrative team too, and with Jenica in particular about what can we do to help with summer slide, because we're seeing more significant slide at the elementary school, which, makes sense. That's their first time walking through and, holding and grasping, and how do we move that into short-term memory, into long-term memory, and how can we work to help support students over the summer?
Anyone else? Oh, Chris.
One other thing about math that I think we didn't discuss, but your team should take credit for, and am I correct that the math homework is now carefully aligned with what they're learning in class instead of the online work they used to be doing?
Correct. So there's a lot of take home, call them games, what are they? Yeah, I guess they're games, right? So you'll see a lot of application from what's happening in the classroom being sent home, so a student can play whatever that math game is they're learning in the curriculum with their family that night, yeah.
If their family.
Correct. And it's not an expectation, it's a resource.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna go so far over time on this, aren't we? Yeah, all right, I apologize. We're also interested. All right, should we move on to the behavior?
I know, we're all listening. I'm not being a good role model.
So this slide will share with you the amount, when you see the referral section, those are office managed referrals. Not classroom managed referrals, that's a key difference, but office managed referrals, and those are by student, not by the amount of referrals. So for instance, in K5, we had 1, and W is for white, and W is for non-white. So we had 7 students with referrals, 1 of them is white, 1 of them is, 6 of them are non-white. The next row over, or column over, sorry, is special ed versus non-special ed. So for instance, in that K5 example, 0 of those students were special ed students, 7 of them were non-special ed students. Same with when we go to suspensions. if I'm just following that K-5 rule, right? 0 of our students that were suspended in K-5 are white, 2.5, that means half days. That's people. There are 2.5 days of suspensions. Because you can have a half day suspension. So actually 3 kids were suspended technically. Yes, and then same with first, second, and third grade. I know that can be a little confusing questions around that.
So referrals are people, and we're looking at the days of suspension. That's the data we're looking at, how many days of suspension.
No, so, sorry, the half is confusing, so sometimes we
The
do
third
a
person
PM,
got a half day
correct,
suspension.
correct.
So three people got, okay.
Yeah, 3 people were suspended, but not for full days.
What's your hot take on this? Like, what do you guys talk about when you look at this data? What do you think about what?
Well, it's not striking, right? I mean, the obvious one is that we have overrepresentation of our non-white students when it comes to referrals. It won't,
Yep.
it's not surprising when we go from office managed referrals to the number of referrals that carries on as well, right? And almost even is greater in length. So the amount of non-white students receiving office referrals are incredibly high, and they don't correlate to our student body. And so we talked about that a lot as an admin team. This was shared with our staff at Monday's meeting. It'll be a point of reference. I know Kelly has talked to us about having continuous data meetings around our referrals with our student support team and teachers as well to look at the data on a more consistent basis so that we have our eyes on that and we're noticing trends throughout the year rather than just in the spring.
So sometimes when I come into private, this is just more a general question, like I will see kids in the office, they will be at the desk with Miss O, or they'll be with Dr. Smith, or they'll be, is that what we're talking about? We're talking about referrals office managed, like kids being sent out of the classroom to the office and like someone's there hanging out with them essentially?
Yes, for the most part. Like there are exceptions, obviously, to some students that are hanging out for the office for different reasons rather than office referral, but for the most part, that's what we're talking about. When the office when either Dr. Smith, myself, part of the SST members have to do some type of restorative action with that student for whatever behavior that was.
I'm glad you're tracking that, even if it's not like a technical suspension or a disciplinary. Yeah, got it.
But so 6 kids in K-5 were have received behavior referrals, office managed, but we don't know how many times those 6 kids, but you do.
Yep, we have that data.
Daniel, are you trying to ask if it's 6 separate children or?
No, he said it is
It's
6
separate
separate kids,
students,
but
yeah.
there could be like 30 referrals, or there
Correct.
could be 5 or 6 referrals, and
For a
If-
particular student.
so
correct,
if
yeah.
there's like, I think that, is there a reason you guys didn't share that data?
There's no reason and we're happy to
Like, there's a
provide
lot-
it.
like-
It's not like
No,
some
I'm-
covert operation here.
I'm like, is it a lot, I mean, well.
No, I think part of the reason why we wanted to demonstrate that is that if you were to, we had it there initially and thought it was more important to be representative of the kids to show that to show the discrepancy,
Yeah.
right? And to have our staff see that discrepancy in white versus non-white student versus voluntary,
Oh, you see it,
right?
right.
It sticks out a little bit more, and so that was part of the intention around sharing it in this way, but we're happy to provide. you
No,
with
that makes sense.
information.
It used to be
Yeah.
shared the other way, and then it was confusing for like, well, how many kids is that?
Right,
How does it
right,
break
and that was
down?
some feedback that I had received when we planned the meeting and
Okay,
talked about
yeah.
presentation of data, so I wanted
Right.
I actually had them
Yeah.
go and flip that the other way.
I actually think
No,
I do think this is more meaningful data
Yeah.
in terms of our
Yeah.
understanding of kind of what's going on.
I agree.
Yeah.
That's why I was, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Overall, the next slide is attendance, and overall, our attendance has been very good at Parkway, right? That trigger that you're trying to look for, that 95%. And so we've reached that in almost all categories. Just notice a few close ones there, 94.56, but overall, our attendance at Parkway has been very good. Continuous work is happening around tardies and getting kids to school on time, and that we'll continue to emphasize the importance of being into school on time. couple of the educational extension opportunities. I know Gus is gonna talk about the after-school clubs, but we have had a couple field trips, obviously, that are listed in there. A couple in-house presentations as well from third grade fire station and meteorologist, and then we kind of combined school-wide afternoon noon meetings, and then we had Nicolay come in for music performance, so that's representative of the 4 there.
Nice.
Mr. Kaufman?
All right, excuse me, it's gross. Gus Hoffman, an education teacher as well as activities and athletic director for the district. Trimester 1, a little bit of a slow start, but expected over at Parkway in terms of what after school activities. We had PE club. Great thing was that Miss Lingard and Miss Freebert impacted 40 students that did participate with PE club 12 times throughout the trimester. Trimester 2, we're ready to get off to a great start with 4 clubs. We're gonna do another PE club. Miss Wampole is doing Crafty Kids, which sounds super cool. Miss Sharnick and Miss Kim are gonna do a winter play. That should be coming out right before winter break. And Mr. Krager and Chloe Holt will also be doing a Friday afternoon basketball club. And so those numbers are gonna be bumping up pretty quick. We're projecting to have about 118 or more students involved in trimester 2 for the after school clubs and activities over at Parkway, which I think we all agree is a huge enhancement, because school is not just school, it's about the whole child.
Yeah.
Great for Glen Hills for the.
Can I just ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Are you tracking, are you keeping track of participation and demographics of the kids participating?
We have not.
Would you, could you, I mean, is that possible?
Yeah, we have all the sign up data, so that wouldn't be that difficult.
Yeah, I think that would be,
Dig a little deeper into who's participating.
like, make sure we're being inclusive.
Got my notes. Absolutely, that sounds great.
EduClimber can do that, right? Or
Infinite.
If the board would be able to honor Mr. Kaufman's time, if we
Yeah,
go
go
to
ahead.
Glen Hills,
Sure.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, but to the.
Oh, educational extension opportunities. Glen Hill.
There we are.
Just from the back.
That's the one?
Yeah, okay.
Right here, do you wanna just look
Listen,
at them?
Glen Hills Middle School Educational Extension. Yes.
Got it.
So just
Okay.
a brief overview from my end, and then you can look at some of the numbers up there. At middle school, traditionally Glen Hills has had 10 seasons of athletics so far. We've had the cross-country season, which we had approximately 70 kids participating. Girls basketball season has already concluded. Unfortunately, we're still a little low on the girls basketball program. However, we have some stellar basketball players because they had another undefeated season this year with just 8 kids on the team. So that was outstanding. And boys basketball is just getting started with both teams right around 10 to 15 students for both 7th grade and for the 8th grade team. Coming up after winter break, the wrestling team will get started. For the Glen Hills, it's actually Glen Hills team combined with Bayside and Mapledale, but the majority of the kids are Glen Hills kids. And then we anticipate probably 20 to 30 kids for that. Once wrestling and boys basketball conclude, then it's the 7th grade girls volleyball starts, 8th grade girls volleyball, and hopefully the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade combined boys volleyball start as well. I say hopefully because 2 years ago we had to cancel the season. We didn't have enough participation. Last year we had, with the combined 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, we did have a team of 10. And so that's just one of those promotional things where I'm trying to keep pushing and get some of the volleyball kids that are in the school knowing that we have this opportunity. So I'm gonna work really hard to make sure that we actually have that season happen this year. Coming up after that is the track season, where we traditionally have between 50 to 80 kids out. And then, sorry, I missed this one, cheerleading. Miss Visser left us unfortunately, but we were able to find a replacement for her with Miss Vale, who's a Concordia education major. That's also a cheerleader. She started the program up at the beginning of November, and that will run through about the beginning of March. So we have, looks like about, well, it's a little more than 200, it's about 220, I believe, student athletes in the athletic side at Glen Hills right now. And then the activities, even more exciting. Currently, we have 22 clubs up and running. There's at least 3 more that are on the radar that we're just trying to get organized and making sure that the supervisors are good to go with their needs and with what they need from us. So between all those clubs, we're looking at 678 or more students. Obviously, there's carryover from, kids can do more than one activity, but 678 students are enrolled in those 22 different clubs and activities. So I feel really strongly we have a little bit of something for every single kid in the school, from the music to Dungeons and Dragons. We have the Rainbow Rights, we have the chess club. It's a huge variety, and I think it really emphasizes just kind of the differences in each of the educators we have that are looking to help show and help teach the kids, something that they find important in their lives, something they found is impactful for them. So that's where I'm coming from. Hey, Glen Hills.
Love it, love it. Nick comes on Thursdays to chess play.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. Is he enjoying it?
He hasn't admitted it to me yet, but he comes without me telling him
Does he
to.
smile a little bit? That means he's loving it.
I think he may be.
Any other questions?
Karen?
Do we track the percentage of our total student body who participates? And do we have any insights, or are we trying to gather any insights into the students who don't, and what might influence that?
This whole tracking of how many kids and who from grade level and digging deeper into one of the demographics is pretty new.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna keep working on that. We're gonna keep kind of working on how to get those rosters finalized and entered in IC. So we can actually really look into who we're missing and what type of clubs and activities we could put together to find the kids that aren't involved.
That might be a great end of year report.
Well, I actually think that there's a lot of potential interweaving that could be actualized there, because it may be that we find that there's patterns of disengagement across the board, and I'd be interested to see where else that information intersects.
Oh, with academic performance and other.
All kinds of things.
Yeah. That'd be interesting.
I wanna, to your point, one of our behavior intervention strategies when we're dealing with students who are sent to the office is actually looking at how do we engage them in those activities, because we do find that students who are highly engaged in their school environment are feeling more confident, more productive, and respond better in our school environment. So.
Yeah.
And I just would like to take a moment to thank Mr. Kaufman. He works tirelessly at putting things together and making sure that our students have opportunities. So thank you, Mr. Kaufman.
It's not necessary, but I truly appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman.
All right.
Go home to your babies.
All right, thank you very much. You almost know.
Everybody else will be up to present on Glen Hills data.
Thank you, guys.
That your little one is. Hello, Mr. Williams and Mr. Williams. All right. Glen Hills.
Right, so we have the same bit of information that Parkway had. But we're looking at our Renaissance Star for our 4th through 8th grade students. So as you can see, we have our demographics on the left, and then we're comparing last year's fall proficiency compared to this year's fall proficiency. And as you can see on the right, it's a lot of good growth throughout all of our demographics, except for our students with IEPs went down 1.62%. But still pretty much still level with last year, and we see some great growth when we look at our scholars with two or more races, and then also Hispanic and Latino students when it comes to our literacy scores.
So yeah, here you are able to see So of the students who took the assessment, we have the students who need that tier 3 or that intervention, those additional supports. And so of that group, there's 5%, the total school. And if you break down the demographics, you have 66% Black African American, 11% white, 19% to a more 4% Asian. We did pay attention to the gender piece here, and as an admin team, we are talking about like, what is happening when it comes to, male, female, things like that. So I know as we talk about all of this data, we have been looking at this as an admin team and saying like what pieces we need to do support whatever group that needs additional support. And so 81% male, 19% female, and then of those groups, 70% making progress, 11% not making progress, and 19% sufficient data.
What's the Glen student population? Like total?
Right now, it's like 486, 487.
Oh, okay, so.
I believe this one is again talking about, so I know what Ryan sort of described sort of that cohort piece here. And so I think this is an interesting data piece to look at it. For me, if I look at like at the very bottom, you see 2025, right? So that's our current 8th grade group. And you can see as they began in 2021. So looking at their ELA data, sorry, got a little over. Let's see it from here. Yep, there we go.
Right here, child.
I'm good.
Okay.
So you see them as 4th graders, right? So you're able to track them through time. So 61 students took the test, 70% proficient, but look at them through time. 5th grade, there's a little dip, 6, but then 7, and you see at 8th grade that huge jump. So you're able to see through time the 2026 group, that's our current 7th grade group, and that's if you look at like the 23-24 ELA and math, you'll see for the most part there was a huge shift in achievement from then until some of the work that they put in last year to some of the current pieces that we're working on now. So look at 23-24 for each group and see there's some huge changes in the data, and I think they were trending upward.
Is there a correlation between when standards change or like when we started focusing on essential standards or like other things changed that?
We started essential standards last year, started our work, but we were still like working on some of the CFAs, and I'll
Right.
speak to some of that too. Like this is a lot of the work that's happening within the buildings, but we were identifying those essential standards last year.
Yeah.
Now we're getting into more of the work and doing our cycles.
Are you feeling like positive?
So
Like you're
this is our
feeling positive because of this,
opportunity-
you're seeing
An
like,
opportunity
okay.
for us to soar.
keep growing. Okay.
Absolutely.
Cool. And also 2021, 21, 22, we're talking COVID. We're talking.
We're bouncing back,
We're talking.
and you can see that in my report.
Yeah, okay.
And I think one of the pieces too is like the way that we break this data down as an admin team. From the very start of my first week here, we were putting this data in front of staff as well, having them sit with their teams and decide, look through the data, process and say, what trends are we seeing? So I think putting that data piece in front of the staff, they sort of own it a little bit more. And so that work is starting to be, felt throughout the system.
And to Danielle's point, when she spoke about Parkway and Hispanic students, we had our teachers looking at that at the beginning of what can we do and how can we not so much target those kids, but what can we do to support those kids in the classroom?
Awesome.
So as we move on, yes, to our math data from STAR, from our 4th through 8th graders, you can see they're pretty much the same thing with our literacy information. We have on the left the demographics, but then on the far right, you can see the change. And we definitely had some great growth with our Asian students and our ELL status students, but also our students with 2 or more races with a 20% growth. We do have some work to do with for our Hispanic and Latino students, but then also our students with IEPs and then our economic status students who did drop as well. But I definitely want to celebrate all the hard work that our teachers have put in the last school year and this school year, because they have been working extremely hard.
It says Parkway, but it's Glen Hills, right?
No.
Oh, that's.
This is Parkway, this is an example again, going back to the example,
Oh,
just to reframe the thinking around essential standards.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
So this shows us the essential standards we're gonna get into next. When we look at our STAR data, we have essential standards as well, from 4th through 8th grade, and you can see where all of our students are falling when they took the STAR at the beginning of the school year. And this is for the ELA data or the literacy data.
So this is a pretty good start to the year then. You already have a lot of students who are pretty secure in what you're going to be teaching them.
Yes, and that speaks to all of the hard work that their teachers did the year before.
Right.
Especially when we look at our 4th grade students coming in. Shout out to all those Parkway teachers who worked so hard in 3rd grade to get them prepared and ready for that transition from Parkway to Glen Hills. But then as you look through all of the grades, you can see that our teachers have put in, our ELA teachers have put in some extremely hard work to make sure that these kids are ready and prepared for their next grade. And as Anna said, and as Ryan said earlier, these ELA standards grow and build on each other each year. When we look at our math data, it's going to be a little bit different, and I'll explain why it looks a little bit different.
Yeah.
So this will be the math data. So as you can see, we hold this up for my eyes like the best, but you can see where our kids are starting off when it comes to the math. And the reason the math looks like that is because this will be some of the first time that these kids will actually see this type of information for these standards. So they wouldn't have had many at-bats beforehand. It's like some kids may have never seen fractions before, but we're expecting them or we're asking them about fractions at the beginning of the school year. So it's not building on like it would be in ELA. It's just, do they know it or do they not know it? And sometimes we don't have kids that have the experience or haven't seen that as much as other students.
This might be a dumb question, but is that typical of like a math curriculum across the like grades to not build like most math, like to just
It's
kind of.
typical of the standards, right? So the
Oh.
standards in ELA are cyclical, so you keep falling back into those standards over and over again with
Okay.
more increasing complexity and rigor, right?
Okay.
Where math standards build on each other and it's more like a ladder. So it's like I would be introduced to a skill here, and then I'm introduced to a new skill here, and I'm introduced to a new skill here, and I may then pull those other skills into a new skill, but it's more of a ladder than it is a loop, if that makes
Okay,
sense.
yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
She did a way better job of explaining that. All right, so as we move on, we're going to look at our behavior data. It's always so it gets me, but when we look at our office managed behaviors, so these would be the behaviors that myself and Leon, our SST would close the loop on, right? So just like with Parkway, we're looking at white and non-white students with our office referrals, and then our suspensions, and also our pre-expulsions, and then to the right would be our special education students and our non-special education students. So you can see where we fall, and these are the number of students, not the number of incidences. So that's all the way through. So in with suspensions, we did a number of students. So we wouldn't have a 0.5. We didn't like, it's just if a kid got suspended,
Yeah.
they got, they got suspended.
So if there's 5 kids, then they could have been suspended more than once.
They could have been suspended. Well, yes, they
Or-
could have been suspended more than once, and they could have been suspended for more than one day. As well, or a half a day.
Okay. What throws itself at me is 7th grade, which, if I'm reading those numbers right, 42, right? It's like 42 students have been referred, that's like almost half the class.
That's in one track. This is the first trimester.
This is just first trimester there.
Right, in the first trimester, almost half the seventh grade has been referred to the office.
Yes.
That throws itself at me, like, what's your hot take on that, like, what's going on there? Is that typical for seventh grade, which is what I've always heard? Is that like pretty typical, or is this
So
something that's
we-
putting question marks up?
We have a very driven and enthusiastic seventh grade. A very driven and enthusiastic sixth grade,
Yeah.
fifth grade, and fourth grade, and you can see that that is that information or that is that excitement and enthusiasm is following them throughout.
Okay,
school.
so it's a grade that.
Yes, and this is
Is
something
working
that,
on it.
this is something that we've tried many different supports throughout the years. However, they are still very headstrong and they're very vocal about what they need and what they want. And we just have to continue to support them and give them the resources that they need so that they can be successful here at our school. And but then also when they make the transition to whatever high school they go to.
I think too, so the one good thing about this is, I think somebody mentioned Edge Climber, right? And so then now we can look at that seventh grade group, we can break down when, where, time of day, who, which
Yeah,
teacher, like, and so
yeah.
now we can go a little bit further
Yeah.
and say, how can we build more capacity in our teachers, more capacity in our staff? What more supports can we do? So I think that's where that data is, so we can go further. And so I think that that's what we're doing. So we see these numbers as
Yeah.
well. And now
Right.
we will hopefully, you know, by the time we talk about this next, you'll start to see decreases because we can go a little bit further with some of the work that we're doing.
Yeah, and shout out to the SST and Kelly with really driving all of that. She's been a huge advocate for us, looking at our Edge Climber data and bringing that data in front of our staff monthly.
I also note that your suspension numbers are low for seventh grade, given the number of referrals, so that, I think I can infer from that a huge amount of hard work. The positive attitude you express about the student body is at the root of it, but there has to be a lot of restorative work behind that, so I also note that difference as an important piece of information about what's going well
Yes,
in our schoolhouses.
we definitely look at the restorative aspect of all of our incidences. And some parents may come in and think, well, my kid is gonna get suspended or expelled, but we're not trying to widen the gap between our students. We want to make sure that they're in school and in class and learning. Looking at our attendance data, it would be like our goal would be our 95%. However, we are still not there in a few places. So when we look at our seventh grade and we look at, well, mostly seventh grade, there is some work we need to do is around how can we get them to attend school and be here every day. And I know that we've actually talked about this because we've had some concerns around tardy to school, but then also tardy to class. So we've been reaching out to parents. We sent out a letter, tardy letter to parents just to keep them in the know. And we've received a lot of phone calls from parents and a lot of emails from parents as well, concerned about their kids making it to class on time. And we have, at our school, we have had an issue with buses getting here on time. So that is being put into account as well.
Goal for the chronic absenteeism, right? There's like is it 3 or is there a goal? Or is it more like
There's a
95%?
state established line.
Is it 3 something? Or no, I'm just pulling that out of nowhere, so I'm not saying.
Chronic absenteeism is triggered when a student is missing more than 10%
Okay,
of their time at school.
okay, got it, thank you.
So we talk about the athletics and after school clubs, but I still want to make sure that we talk about our field trips. Fourth grade went to River Edge, the Nature Center. Sixth grade had a chance to go to Clutch Park with Miss Clark, and then eighth grade, they had a chance to go to Lakeshore Park with Miss Morale and some of our eighth grade teachers. But then we also had in-house presentations for our seventh and eighth grade students, especially when it comes around world language, because we want to prepare them as they make the shift to Nicolet and how important world language can be when studying a different language, that can help them overall as a student. But then when we look at our talent development, we have Ms. Morale, who has she took actually a cohort of fifth graders today to Star Base, and then Ms. Morale also took some seventh graders to MSOE and also Carroll University. And then we've had a string concert for our sixth and eighth graders. That's the one concert we had this trimester. And we have a lot more this trimester, so that number will jump the next time we present.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Okay,
Yeah,
all
we
right.
appreciate your growth.
And can I just say, thank you to the principals, because this is a huge amount of work, so I think I can speak for the whole board in saying we very, very, very much appreciate the effort and information.
That's all because of our boss. He prepped us a long time ago.
This guy. All right. All right. So just want to cover information about domain 2, the learning environment. So part of our work of it is an administrative leadership team when we think about our practices. We have student data, but we also have adult data that we need to look at. And part of that data is looking at how do we help guide our teachers with clarity around what those expectations are in the classroom? How do we support their practice so that they can get there? But that starts with clarity. So as an administrative team, we have been spending time on norming around domain 2, which is the learning environment of cultivating respect and affirming environments. Some of the key areas we were looking at was active listening, response to student work and positive reinforcement, respectful talk and active listening and turn taking within the classroom, acknowledgement of students' backgrounds and lives outside of the classroom, noticing politeness and encouragement towards students and between students, and then also body language that's indicative of warmth and caring shown by teacher and students. And so what we did is went into classrooms, and as an administrative team, we visited over 55 classrooms and did that in various triads and duos of partnerships between different people. So we all had an experience of visiting classrooms together to say, what does good look like? And these were some of our noticings, which we've now then taken and put in front of staff. So they have a very clear idea of this is when I'm looking for active listening, this is what I'm looking for as an evaluator and as somebody looking at your teacher practice. Some specific stems that are there. So these are all reflective of things we saw and heard in our classrooms and speak to the strengths of our teachers and the work that they do in domain 2. To continue that work, we spent some time with teachers talking about what culturally responsive teaching is and what it is not. One of the areas that we saw as a area that needs to continue to grow is relating what students are learning to their lives outside of school. And so we know that that is a big marker. So just sort of tackling that and with some initial steps of just defining that. And then giving some examples to them about what it means to do that work. After that, you see information about domain 3. So what our work will be in this next trimester as an administrative team is to go in and work on norming our look-fors around engaging students in learning. And these are some of the indicators or look-for areas that we'll be looking at and then looking for those markers of that. And then what we will be doing is then providing feedback to teachers directly on domain 2. Now that we've had that moment to say to them, this is clearly what we're looking for, then when we leave out of a classroom space, we can say, have you thought about other ways to do this so that we can continue to push practice and we can celebrate those things that we're seeing that are really good in practice. So that's sort of our adult data and work that we're working on. I
really love this, this domain 2 kind of what I think of as like a, almost a cheat sheet. Where you noted the good things, right? Because like if I was a teacher struggling to connect with my kids, I could put something on like this in front of me before the day starts and like choose 2 or 3 things I'm gonna work on. I just love that model, because it's a help, this is a help desk right here that you could turn to. Like I just tape it to the inside of a drawer on my desk. Like the kids are treating me bad today. I could pull that out and be like, how am I gonna reconnect with my kids? So I love this. And I love that you're tackling this issue of what is culturally responsive teaching and what is not, because that is a difficult, rich and deep and long conversation. So kudos for going there, being willing to engage in that. Anyone else?
And just to add to that, we had a lot of conversation as a lot of our notices around what was good and maybe those areas that even need work was they're really micro shifts in teaching. That's like the way we like to talk about them as, you know, even honoring outside parts of students' lives, asking students what they know before teaching them and honoring their knowledge base is an easy micro shift in your teaching practice that can really garner a lot of sense of agency for our students in our classrooms.
Okay,
We went over time. But it was really well worth it. I hope everyone knows that this board, we're just so curious. We're so grateful to have access and transparency to this kind of data and an opportunity to ask questions and to have your expertise in front of us. So thanks for humoring us. Unless there is an objection, would this be a good time for a brief break before we talk student report card?
I think that would be appropriate.
Okay, is there any objection from the board? Then we will take a 5-minute break. We will be in recess for 5 minutes. We're back in session. There.
Wayne Martin, 7275 North Port Washington Road, apartment 12. 53217. So for the attendance numbers, was that unexcused absences or excused and unexcused absences?
It is both excused and unexcused absences, in the sense that we keep track of how many times students are out of school in the state of Wisconsin. Essentially, parents have 10 days of excused absences that, and then once they've met that threshold, any absences after that could be deemed unexcused by the school unless they're medically excused or come with sort of a notification of a medical need.
The STAR assessments, I know a lot of the assessments have been being renormed for proficiency. Was the STAR also renormed?
Yes, the STAR is reflective of some of that renorming because we use the STAR as a predictor to determine where our students will fall on the forward test. And when you hear Ms. Stick's report tonight on our school report card, you'll see very tight alignment. I do want to say that alignment, and Ms. Stick will talk about that, is really based on getting closer to the standards we actually teach more than an abstraction. And so I will allow her to kind of delve into that a little bit more in this next part.
Yes, 2 last comments to end it out. When I was going through school, I was probably amongst the dumbest in my friend group, but I'd routinely score higher than them on the assessments since a lot of them just didn't try. As hoping that potentially there'd be something the board or school could do to encourage people to try their best, like since Mr. Kaufman's not here, like give them junk food or a pizza party or something.
Friday night, yeah.
Seemed to work all right at Nicolay, so hopefully you do it here, it'll also work. And then also, don't be afraid of sending, and try not to discourage teachers from sending students like referrals to the office. That can potentially be something that gets on the track for the help they need So just comment there.
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Yes. As a Glen Hills parent now, I don't have anybody at Parkway anymore. But some of the teachers do actually do prizes and things for, like, if the whole class moves up this percentage between the STAR test and the STAR test, or like individually. Some of the teachers do that, and know that the whole school does, but some of the teachers do.
In relationship to that too, we also, I know, Mr. Williams and Mr. Williams here, because the testing piece at the middle school is a little bit different. Is having students own their data and to make sure that they understand what that data means and keep track of it and say, you know, what kind of personal goals can I set for myself? So there's some personal ownership around how do I take control of my learning and my data, and why does that matter?
Objection to going into recess? We are in recess for 5 minutes.
Audio's on.
We are back in session. Thank you, everyone. We're moving on to item 3B, the DPI school report card update.
We're doing it. All right, district school report card summary. So school district policy 2261.03 district and school report card indicates that each school district that receives Title I Part A funds must prepare and publicly disseminate a report card on the performance of the district. The district's report card is provided by Wisconsin DPI and contains information required by state and federal law. This district report card must be made publicly available through such means as posting on the district website and distributed to local media and public agencies. We have done that on our website. It's been published in the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. And according to policy of the board, we will also provide school level overview directly to all parents, which we have done already via email and in Thursday folder. So everyone should have a copy of the report. It's also in board docs as well. So I'll get started. So all our students in 3rd through 8th grade took the board exam last spring. Our 3rd through 8th grade students all participated in ELA and math assessments. Our 4th graders did science and social studies as well as our 8th grade students. So the district report card overview is our overall score was a 68.8, which meets expectations. Parkway did receive and exceeds expectations, and Glen Hills had meets expectations. And all of those are linked within your report if you'd like to dig in those separately. So looking at our achievement, I'm just going to do some highlights through this. If you want to stop at any time to ask questions, feel free. Just our overall achievement for the district was a 59.8%. So you can kind of see that there. Our report card is measured by 4 data points, and they're each 25% that comes to that overall meets expectation score. So everyone knows. Something to be thinking about when we think about achievement, it's based off of 3 years worth of data. So it's not just 1 year's worth of data. So every time we do this, it's like 3-year rolling data that is pulled together for that achievement. So sometimes when like COVID hit, some of our numbers went a little down. So now things are like venturing up, right? Yeah. We still have our COVID scores on this report card.
Yeah, what are the 3?
It was 2021. Or 20, 21, 22, 22, 23, and 23, 24. So we still had some of those scores still floating out there. So when you're looking at figure 1, you can kind of see that right up on the score there. Something else to note that these are new standards for ELA and math. Okay, so these are the new Wisconsin standards. The past assessments were not, they were Common Core standards.
Right.
Okay, so that's a shift. The other thing is too, with this achievement, scoring, they had to do some tweaks in the background to make it comparable to last year's scores. So any district didn't, like if they went down in achievement, they actually could let them keep their achievement scores from the past. They didn't have any district go below.
Yeah.
Our district, we grew in all our scores, so we didn't have to worry about that, but if a different district would have gone
So
down.
they created a floor.
They did.
Ah,
They did.
interesting.
Yeah, so next year might
be a little different, right, for some other districts, but we did make that growth. So that's a really good thing for our district. So, so looking at the 4 areas of testing, we did go up in all the areas, but you can also see the state scores too. So the one thing to look at is that math score still, right? So we're still a little below the state in math, but overall, once we dig into some of that math data, we'll be able to see that overall, as a school district, we made some really good growth. So and when we look at this, we really should be looking at ourselves.
Right.
And not necessarily everyone else, because we should be internally wanting to grow ourselves, right? So, looking at figure 2, this is similar to the data that you just saw, with the building, level data around STAR. This is not cohort data, this is just the grade level data, so it's not the same students. So when looking at this, you can just see going into 3rd grade, this is helpful, when looking at trends. Overall trends, big picture trends, to see what's going on in our grade levels. So you can kind of see that we had a little dip there in our 3rd grade in math, which was really important for us to know. And we could see that in the STAR testing too, because STAR is a predictor, right? So then we were able to put some pieces in place with our 4th grade students this year, because they came in with some skill gaps. So then we came up with some supplemental resources for them to help fill some of those gaps. So the 4th grade team in math is working on that currently. So this data does help drive some of the instruction and what we're doing in classrooms. And then if we go to figure 3, that's where you're looking at that cohort data. And you're able to see a lot of really good growth, especially when we're looking at our middle school for ELA and math. We have some great growth happening there. A lot of strong instruction and students really working hard. Keep rolling, we'll keep on some questions. Figure 4, this is where we're getting into some of those different student groups. So looking at some of the discrepancies, the real positive is what I'm seeing here is our students are making growth all the way across. It's just students are not growing as much as others. So when we look at this page in our student groups, and we go to figure 5, you're noticing that some of those gaps are getting bigger, right? So you might look at that right away and be like, wow, that gap's really getting big. But then when you go back to figure 4, you can kind of see that some of those groups, like when we look at when we look at that big change from white and Hispanic. So if you look at our white students, they made some really huge growth, 60% to 71.7%. And then our Hispanics were 41% and to 41.7%. So then the gap just gets bigger, right? So, and that's something we're seeing in our STAR testing too. And this data just came out like 2 weeks ago, but the STAR is a predictor of this, right? So that's why it's so important for us to utilize some of that STAR data to start asking those questions like, what is going on, and then how can we support that student group? So this is it's predictive and very similar, so that's a real positive that we have that within our district to get the data sooner, because this is last year's data that we're looking, right? So it's just so far behind. And then when you look at math, I'm gonna do a similar, let's see. It's the same thing where the groups are broken out. And here I do have the numbers of students, so you can kind of see what the size of the different groups are. So that's kind of helpful with framing your thinking. So you can kind of see, so we have 225 students who are white and 190 of those students. You can kind of see the number of students and the percentages on figure 6.
Can
And figure 4.
I just can't figure out what the top row is, what looks like a
Oh,
GDRH.
Glendale-River Hills, it's the number of students and then the student group, yeah. And then the percentage of students that are advanced or proficient.
Okay, so
Sorry,
the first number is the
I'll
number
put
of
it in
students. The second number is the percentage who.
Advanced and proficient.
Got it.
Sorry,
Okay.
This is the whole district. Year over, so. 15, okay,
15,
okay.
16 means
Okay.
this
The year.
2015, 2016
Yeah, so
school year.
it's, so you can kind of see all the way across. And then the numbers too, so you can see the rise and fall in some of the numbers as well. The student numbers.
I'm going to Julie, I'm gonna have to
Yeah,
stick with this
yeah.
for a lot longer.
Right, so when we look at our economic status, I mean, we made some really good growth for students who are not economically disadvantaged, but we also made really good growth for students who are. We also, as administrative team, we had some discussion around some of that. I'm looking at even our STAR data at Parkway, and we were seeing that we're bumping up, so we have 40 more students this year than last year. That will fall in that student group. So we really need to keep eyes on everything, like at that granular, like so small of a level versus this, right?
I feel like for 10 years, I've been hearing that as we see growth, we always see the gap grow. It feels like it's a trend that's never not there,
But
right?
I think we're seeing other student groups grow more than we have.
So the gap is growing less than the gap used to grow. The curves are coming, yeah,
It's.
I hear you.
But we want it, you know, this needs to be accelerated, but we still want everyone to grow, right?
Right.
So that's the hard thing, right? We just want more accelerated growth.
I think philosophically too, I just think about systemic inequity, and if you can't address that, you could still have the best teachers, best curriculum, and all of that, but if systemic inequity in funding is not addressed, I don't like, how do you actually overcome these gaps?
And we're, a lot of our focus is around some of that instructional practice, looking at domain two and pulling in
Right.
some of that into our teaching practices too.
Yeah, I mean, it's good, I just worry it's not enough when you're facing such a.
Well, that's some of the work that we have as advocates, you know, at the state level
Yeah.
around funding.
Yeah.
It's a good motivator, it's a good reminder of why it's so important for me.
Yeah,
Put my
Sorry, not to
energy
be a
there.
downer.
No, yeah.
No, I mean, that number for advanced proficiency, Black percent in the district, 23%. Whoa. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I think like the other part of contextualizing some of this when we think about like social and educational capital for students and the variance that exists there is thinking about access to early literacy, early numeracy is a key component of that. And I think the other component to think about too is that we saw that sort of the way that summer slide looks too, right?
Yeah.
And who is that summer slide impacting, and like how do we as a district allocate resources to help prevent some of those things that may be built and baked in that are like right now are out of our control, but we could try to put supports in place to help support. Yeah.
Like tutoring maybe or something, because I think a lot of districts have addressed their COVID learning loss through that kind of intervention, right?
Well, tutoring and then also looking at additional summer program.
Right.
As well, so I know we've had conversations about really, you know, upping some of that, the game around.
Yeah,
Right, with that money coming down the pike and all of that.
Yeah.
Really thinking about how are we structuring some of those things in the summer to help support students. And then also, looking at family supports, right, throughout the, so what are some supports that we can, you know, help families with in education and supporting them with what are some things that they can do at home. We have one of our staff members who's gonna be working with, educational group, with some of the people that used to be at Stretch. Thinking about creating supports for families around early literacy and things that they could be doing at home, and just coming up with a parent education model, right? So we're really kind of thinking on that end too, just thinking about our different pillars. That community engagement too is so important. So kind of like blending it all together because we're all in it together with the kids. So, big pieces to that. So a lot of good conversation with the administrative team and getting a lot of our teacher leaders to help support this with them. Well, here's a positive shift. Look at our science and social studies.
Yeah.
Scores going up, so that's figure 8. And this is not cohort data because it is a little, just 4th grade being assessed and 8th grade. So we are moving in the right direction. And then I know in the past I've done some comparisons with other districts. There's a lot of warnings out there. When I was at CSUN, we were digging into the report card that this really is not meant to be comparing other districts. But I did put some comparisons on here just if you wanted, to do a look-see. The blue line is for the state, the little red dots are where people landed on that achievement. So you can kind of see where we're at. Both for ELA and for math, in comparison to only the CISA 1 districts. So they're all listed on here. This is not all the districts in the state. So these are just the ones that were part of CISA 1. I think the biggest highlight for us is our growth area. When we look at growth for us, we were 68 or 69.8 in growth. And when you look at where we are as a district, we were higher than the same as or higher than 77.1% of districts in the state. So we are growing our students. If you look at figure 9, they use a value add model. So all these groups are compared to similar students across the state, whether or not they're making the same or more growth. So if you see a blue box, that's shaded in blue, our students are making the same or more growth than similar students across the state. So I.
By cohort, yeah, got it.
Yeah, and these are only for students who took the test the previous year, so, to make that growth, and they had to be within the district for a year. So they're only comparing, last year, the year before score to the. So you can kind of see for ELA, we're sitting pretty good for growth. It's up to a 6-point scale. So we have room to grow even more, right? But we are shifting the dial. And then for math is a big celebration.
Are those years wrong? Is it 20?
Oh, yeah.
20, okay,
Sorry.
just making sure. Yeah, the math numbers look good.
Yeah. That's the newest one.
Which is, how does that correlate to math going down?
This is growth measure. This is growth.
So it's not scores, it's.
How much
How much improvement?
So when we dug into the data, a lot of our students made, because it's a scale, right? So there's proficient, advanced, beginning, developing. So we moved students that were at the very low end into the next box, but they didn't move into proficiency.
Okay.
So we're moving students, right? And we just haven't gotten them more of the proficiency, right?
Okay.
So I think that's something that's really important. So when you dig into the report card, it's not the report card that's it's on page 4, but you can kind of see how we're moving students from developing, that we're moving them now into approaching meeting, right? So we're making that shift. We just haven't gotten them into meeting. So that's the work that we're doing now, right? It's getting them to the meeting.
Do you have access to like comparative data for different demographics? In terms of like score, like proficiency, not growth. So like, going back to like this percentage of 23.7% of our Black students are proficient in math. Do we have like, do we have data to compare how Black students are doing in the other like, CISA 1 districts or various districts? Is that, or do you have to like extrapolate and create that? You'd have to do that. Like,
No, I mean, all of that information is like readily accessible on, so like you could go into any school report card on the Wisconsin UPI website as.
I guess, and then
look at the
okay.
level of proficiency. I think the key piece though is that, to me, is looking at that growth measure is moving student achievement takes time. And so when I look at this idea that we may not have crossed the threshold into proficiency, but the gains that we're making to get there are strong. And where I would be looking is, are we in like districts moving students in the same degree, right? Because if you're starting at proficient, like if you think about those essential standards, if those students started their year there, they're gonna end their year there. That doesn't necessarily mean they've made a lot of educational gains. Our students are making good educational gains in our district. But it is going to take time to flip that narrative, but we have to keep studying that work, I think is like, at least that is the take that I would see there, is that takes a good amount of time to move that.
Yeah, I just also wonder, like, to the point about sort of the structural inequity, if you see a trend around, like, so I just analyzing that data to not. Anyway, yeah, thank you, I'm sorry. I'm trying to. Yeah.
You know, it's been.
Yeah, no, I know,
Yeah, and, you know.
right,
So, and I did add growth comparisons for other districts as well on there, if you want to dig into that a little bit. And then we were looking as or better than 77% of them. And then just kind of leading into those general findings, so I did go over, you know, we made gains in 4 out of 4 subject areas. The one that we were below the state in again was to math. So when we look at, I just pulled out where we had significant growth, so I did at 5 or above %. Advanced or proficient, like we had growth in those areas, so you can kind of see there that science was a big win for us. Looking at district overall, ELA, we went up 11%, but we can see the different grade levels that really had some good growth. So looking at that 5th grade ELA, 26.5%. When we go into district math, we can see gains in 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade on achievement. And then when you dig into more of that cohort data, that's a little further down, the class of 20, 27, 26, 25, 24, 26, 25, 26, all the way down. We're seeing some really good growth within that. The science and social studies growth as well, but again, that's not cohort data, that's just strictly the grade level data. And then thinking about those areas of growth, we need to continue to work on math, right? When we work on math, we'll always be working on ELA, focus effort on that math. And then where our significant gaps were, and we're seeing this with STAR too, so I mean, that's a good thing. We get more data from STAR more frequently, so that we can see if what we're doing is making shifts, right? Because this is a so Hispanic students for both ELA and math. We've also saw our disabilities as well shift. One thing that Kelly and I were talking about is we have really good growth for students with IEPs during COVID because we built, right? So what a difference some of that makes, you know. And then for our EL population as well. It's such a small population, so it's very tricky to measure some of that. And then also looking at our students who are Black in math, we drilling down on that. Especially starting with Berkeley, right? Because this is not just planning, as we have to build it from the base all the way up. And then district response, I mean, you've heard a lot of it, right? Talking about domain 2, talking about domain 3, really framing everything around those equity commitments and that equity lens and having those discussions in our planning meetings and really focusing on that. We've been doing so much work around those priority standards and essential standards, sending teams of teachers to the PLC conference in the summer and getting that PLT process going. And that's really looking at that data on a timely manner. So whenever we start a unit, we're doing that pre-assessment, we're determining where students are at. We're talking about those unit internalizations, all of this kind of weaves together. What are we teaching? What standard are we addressing? How are we assessing that? How are we showing students what the success criteria is? So students know what they should be learning. And then coming back and looking at that data. Did it work? Did it not? Did students pick that up? If they picked it up in one class and then in a different class, what are you doing? Having those conversations within teams and really is helping with some of those instructional practices and moving students. I'm also focusing in on like some SEL instruction too. They're doing development plans there over here. Parkway is doing a lot of work with their culture committee, as well around SEL work and with their SST team. Those academic interventions that we're working on. We're working on K-5 through 5th grade, the 95% core instruction, which is a new implementation this year for K-5 through 2nd grade. This is the 2nd year for 3rd through 5th grade. We are seeing some good gains in our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students who have done that already. The teachers are feeling more comfortable. It takes a little time to get that up and running. We are training all of our administrators at Parkway, our literacy coaches, interventionists, and then also classroom teachers in the early literacy around the science of reading and planning around Act 20. That's going to be starting in a few weeks. And doing a lot of planning around that, so it'll be good. So we'll have some more data to share as well. So making shifts in our instruction and our thinking and our teaching. We've also added the K4 team is all involved in the science of reading and are going to start piloting Haggerty, which is a reading of awareness curriculum. And then I'm really focusing in on at the school level over there. Just some of those, that after school tutoring. We have some of our coaches who and some additional people that are coming in to volunteer at Glen Hills that are doing math and ELA tutoring after school. It's amazing, and I can speak to that because you've seen it. Having that resource time in the morning, the SEL wellness, and the kind of those same things like we're replicating district-wide, those PLT meetings and all of that, the teams working together. They're working on that portrait of a learner. We're continuing our guiding coalition work, so getting those teacher leaders working within the buildings to do some of that problem solving. Parkway, huge focus on Act 20. I mean, that's what we're doing, is we're doing Act 20. Just be real nice. So a lot of trainings around Ames Web Plus, the assessment, what does that look like? Some of these new screeners that we're going to have are different than what students are used to taking. So this is kind of a brand new thing for everyone. So walking through it together to get that all up and running. So every student at Parkway will be assessed. So, and then just the parent communication, the diagnostic assessment. So we'll be drilling down real tight for all students at Parkway. So there's going to be a lot of work around that. So we're excited for the work, but it's going to take a little time to get it all running smoothly.
Taking deep breaths, just thinking about it.
It's good.
It's a heavy load.
It's good work though. It's good work. And I think we have the right people doing it. So kudos to all the teachers that are digging in and across the entire district. The administrative team has done nothing but and all of you. Thank you. Questions?
Chris?
Surprisingly, no.
Karen?
No, just thank you very much. We appreciate how you digested all of this for us and provided the insights. I mean, I think there's lots of additional information that can be delved into, but it's not always, I think some curiosities are, our internal data looks really good, and that's exciting. I mean, the growth to see that we're trending in the right direction is really exciting.
Right. And when I look at some of the star, thinking about how we're moving forward, it's only going to get better. And the other thing too about, I didn't mention, the state did mention that they were, because of Act 20, they're supposed to be giving us forward data in May this year. So we'll see.
Nice.
We'll see.
That would be nice.
It might be, we might have it early. Yes.
Danielle?
No, I just wanted to clarify, did you say you're piloting a new phonics program in just K4? Or what did I, or could?
It's phonemic awareness.
Oh,
It's an add-on.
Oh, okay, okay.
It's not a new, full new curriculum. It's
Okay.
just a, 10
Something
minute
to
piece.
supplement for
Yeah.
K4.
Yeah.
That's just that sound awareness, right?
Mhm.
Separating
Just
sounds.
getting that going. They currently use the Boston Public School curriculum, which is amazing, but just tightening it up, more explicit, systematic instruction.
Cool, that's it. Thank you.
You got it.
I had a wondering, because I'm wondering if there's evidence or any research that's been done more broadly about bias in the forward testing. Do you know if there's any evidence or published research out there?
I don't know if there's published research out there, but, anecdotal.
I mean, when you think about standardized testing, I'm just wondering if.
Standardizing testing in general.
Right,
yeah.
right. So I'm curious whether there's any formal research that's been done, like, like every SATs, LSATs, MCAT, all of it. There's a lot of evidence out there about built-in bias. I'm curious whether there's.
And I think we've had this discussion about utilizing like our CFAs. So those are our assessments that are like teacher created or part of the curriculum. Like
Yeah.
that gives us like right away data, and it is also assessing that standard, right? So that we get that information. When you're looking at like a STAR assessment on those essential standards, you might have one or two questions on that. So if a kid was looking the other way and clicks or,
Oh,
you know
right.
what I mean? You get
Right.
two shots to answer the question. Whereas if you're doing a CFA and then maybe it's a one-on-one assessment, like this Ames Web that we'll be doing in K4 through 3rd grade, a lot of it is a one-on-one assessment, not computer-based. There are some differences between that. Our CFAs are like that. A lot of it is one-on-one, or it's a written response where a teacher can look at it, right?
Right.
So we may get more information and better information from some of that. Forward again, when you look at some of that, there's not all the standards that are addressed. And
Right.
you might have one question on a standard. So, it can be kind of tricky. with some of
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And then the other thing, I don't know, I'm tired, so I'm oversharing. I'll just put in my continuing plug for the importance of the SEL supports and work and all this, because where I found myself going as I was thinking about your questions about the race gaps and gender gaps, all those things, when you talk about culturally responsive classrooms, the sense of safety that builds for students, the sense of resilience you build when you stumble and fall, when you look at the data that shows you my people do worse, right? I mean, that's really, if you're a person of color, you're like, my people are gonna do worse on this test. I'm already internalizing that failure. I think a lot about resilience and coping skills and how all this stuff we're doing in our district, I wish and hope, when done well, will eventually translate into the kind of growth we want to see. So it's exciting. It's both depressing and exciting to see that we've got our team in place, that we're doing this work, and I'm just gonna keep my eyes open and hope we see that growth that we're fighting for here. So just what I'm thinking about.
Can I add one thing now that when you were like wondering and being curious, this is just like, I'm thinking about if we know there's bias in testing and obviously it doesn't represent the whole picture, like how do we dream about creating and sharing the narrative that actually gives the whole picture of what our students are doing? And like sort of rebelling against this idea that testing data is, it's so, we can value it and use it and it's a marker for some people, but I guess I'm just kind of like thinking about all the tools and resources we have to share and create a narrative around our district and our students that makes a fuller picture.
Yeah. A positive picture.
Yeah.
I like using the data as like a goalpost of, okay, here's where we are, here's what we need to do, as opposed to like, here's what our kids are,
Right,
Mhm.
right.
It's a sliver.
Right.
Okay, anything else from anyone? Mr. Martin?
Just a few quick comments, hopefully.
You need a microphone?
Can they hear me?
No, I think he's good.
Okay.
So you were talking about early reading and math being key to some of this. It is within the board's power to establish a pre-kindergarten for like 3-year-olds and younger. It's also potentially in the board's decision-making ability to say establish aftercare contract with aftercare facilities. I'm fairly doubtful that they'd say no, assuming they had the capacity to take students. So there's something potentially there for people that say parents are out of the house and doing other stuff and can't do the reading and math with their kids as much as they want.
Yeah, it's always about funding too.
And stuff.
And then I believe pre-K is also something that you get funding for, which you'd have to ask your business director about that one, but.
Like
Then-
three, get partial funding, yeah.
And then last comment I have on this one, when I was going through Glen Hills, they taught me to put a key on all of the various incendiary graphics that I made to explain things, which would potentially be something worth implementing against policy, just for people that don't always look at all the data and aren't familiar with all the terminology and shorthand.
Yeah, no, you're like the kid, right on, that's cute. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Jenica. Moving on, we're in the closing stretch. This is our first overtime meeting in a long time. We've got a huge amount of data, so we're on to item 4A, superintendent update.
All right, I will work to work through this. We had a safety update to the community on Monday, December 2nd, around 2 sex offenders who are moving into housing, which is actually located in Milwaukee, but is near Parkway Elementary. The Glendale Police gratefully reached out to us proactively so that we could share this information and continue to work with them on any further updates around this matter. We do want to remind all of our families that when visiting the schools, to please have a state issued ID or driver's license so it can go through the Raptor system, because the Raptor system does do a soft background check, which would pick up on any of those pieces. We also are encouraging members of our community to be aware of their surroundings. If they see something suspicious, to please say something. We do have a reporting form on our website under the family button. And in addition to that, making sure that our staff was informed of this event prior to. So, you know, wanting to make sure that our community has that information and updates around that. Not in my report, but would like to update again on the safety is, a letter was sent out to our district regarding, social media use around TikTok. This was, you know, a cautionary piece, although, you know, assessed to be no substantive risk. Students, or adults using those things, or those media forms, they do run algorithms on them, which is what triggered that, report to us. And so, you know, thinking about the fact that that student use in particular, I think about could trigger that kind of, or elicit law enforcement involvement, and making sure that we're having those conversations with our students around appropriate social media use and really, understanding the impact of words and making sure that we want to make everyone feel safe in our spaces. So those are, 2 of the updates that I have around that. The other update I wanted to provide was on Act 31 and Native American Heritage Month. So a question was posed by a board member in terms of our compliance around Act 31.
Shocker.
So I just, you know, some of the things around Act 31 are legislated by the state. So all licensed teachers in the state of Wisconsin must have instruction in the study of minority groups relations, which includes instruction in the history, culture, and tribal sovereignty of federally recognized American Indian tribe bands located specifically to the state of Wisconsin. What this means is if we have teachers who are teacher prepped in, for example, California, they come to Wisconsin to get a teacher's license, they would have to enroll in coursework. There's coursework that is provided at all of our local IHEs or institutes of higher education, as well as Wisconsin DPI does offer various workshops around the learning that needs to happen for teachers to become in compliance. So in order to hold a Wisconsin license, you have to be able to do that. If you are on an emergency license and in a teacher prep program, that will be part of your teacher prep program. Act 31 around educational goals and standards. Schools are expected as a part of Act 31 to provide instructional programming that develops appreciation and understanding and different value systems of cultures, with particular regards to American Indians, Black Americans, Hispanics, Hmong Americans, and Asian Americans. I want to recognize that we strive for equity in our district, but that we recognize that this is ongoing work that needs to continue to evolve, especially as more is learned and our resources improved. We do know that this work is supported in our English language arts curriculum through diverse texts that expose students to varied human experiences in both historical, contemporary, and future settings. And in social studies, students participate in learning that seeks to teach the skills of examining history, economics, geography, politics, and culture from multiple perspectives. And in fourth grade, and specifically, students study Native American tribes from Wisconsin. And in eighth grade, our students study Native American history in the greater context of their study of US history. Our music and arts programming also explores value systems and culture through learning about and producing both art and music. For Native American Heritage Month, which was part of our resolution, students from Parkway visited the Milwaukee Public Museum, which was also celebrating Native Heritage Month. And so at the museum, they were able to learn more about the crops grown by Native Americans. Dr. Smith shared some interactive resources with staff that allow students to hear firsthand from Native students in the United States and Canada around treaty rights, tribal sovereignty, and environment and history. This is really important learning when it comes from contemporary students, because one of the misnomers about speaking about Native Americans is contextualizing them in the past rather than seeing them in the present. She also shared an interactive library of picture books featuring Native American heritage. Both libraries featured books on Native heritage and texts with Native American authors and protagonists. And our students at fourth grade in Glen Hills explored Wisconsin tribes and illustrated their learning through story jumpers, slides, or poster boards, which are all presentation tools. And the administrative team reflected on how we can better highlight the contributions and perspectives of various cultures and groups to support our vision of the district. And we would like to create a growing repository of resources to support the board resolution calendar. So for example, at Glen Hills, we have a repository of anti-racist, anti-bias teaching tools. And so that becomes, I guess, like a internally crowdsourced resource so that people can add to it. And so that teachers have a ready to go to tool that they can seek out lesson plans, resources. And the way that that's broken down is by like resources that we can use with children, but then also resources we as adults can explore to learn more and deepen our sensibilities around other cultures and perspectives. Yeah.
You may ask your question.
Thank you. No, I appreciate this update. Just a thought about forward future thinking too is I'd love to see us, once you have this repository, share out those resources with families like in the appropriate month too.
Yeah.
You know, like here's what we're doing, and then like.
And to invite contribution from families.
Sure, that'd
If
be
you have
wonderful. Yep, sure.
Asian families,
Absolutely.
for
Yeah.
example, for Asian Awareness Month.
Yeah.
I might have something
That's
I
a
could
terrific
contribute.
suggestion.
Yeah.
And I think this is for the fridge, but I would love to follow up with you, Jenica, around what the textbooks or the curriculum are for the 4th and 8th grade. Teachings. I just would love to see them. The question that I had that I was trying to get at, was the way I read the requirements is that in every grade level, there should be a touch on these cultures, like on that statute, right? Like particularly those groups mentioned. And my understanding of the way like teachers teach is that they pick some of their, I mean, they're doing their own lesson planning, like there's not necessarily a set curriculum around these topics. Right, so it's like, it would be up to each teacher to be like, I'm going to incorporate teachings about Black Americans, Native Americans, Hmong Americans, Asian, etc. throughout the year to make sure that there's a touch on this somehow.
Yeah, like
So-
whether they're pulling it in through like a read aloud.
Yeah, however, whether it's exposure through an author or etc. But like how you're the person who's supposed to be like keeping that accountability, right? And that sounds like a really onerous task. So how do we know that like in 1st grade, or my daughter's in 2nd grade, her teacher is going to make sure that she incorporates some honoring or teaching or authors or representation of these various groups. If there's like no you know, there's no, I mean, that's like why I'm like, how are we actually complying if that is?
Yeah, we could do more mandating, you know what
Well,
I
I
mean?
mean, I don't know if that's
Like,
the answer. I don't know what
laying
the,
it in there.
I don't know
And
what the
then-
answer is. Maybe even just offering the resources and a reminder that,
Mhm.
you know, we're supposed to do that, but a lot of times, yeah.
And we, like, during the month and stuff like that, you know, if, when there is, you know, specific months, that is like a high point of when, you know, teachers are gonna pull it in. But I do think determining in grade levels, I think that there would be some real benefit of where are you doing
It's
it
like age
within it,
appropriate, yeah.
like your grade level team, where are you doing it?
Yeah.
And just
Well, and
document.
there's something so tokenizing about
Yeah.
really doing it during the month that
Yeah,
I don't
know,
love.
that's,
But it's like, but
That's
it's
why,
the,
I
it's,
know.
but it's the
I know.
impetus to making sure it gets taught, right? And like, if we wanna be like a role model, you know, district, it would be like, look at us incorporating this into like every facet of
Yeah.
learning.
And then we do have so many books, right, that, you know, from all different authors and so many diverse books that students have that choice too.
Yeah.
Also interest
Right.
level wise and, you know, so I think that's a real positive where we get it in at all different points through that. But I do hear you, and I
That's-
think
yeah.
that's something to have conversations with teachers about. That would be a good conversation to have with them.
Yeah, I have a wondering, like, as, you know, as I mentioned before, I have two kids at the middle school, I know that. It's like starting from fourth grade, like, in the ELA, they kind of get to pick and choose which books they are reading, and that not every kid reads every book.
Right.
Are we letting those books be like how we're meeting this goal, because then some kids are not going to get these touch points?
It's more through read aloud and articles and different pieces
Yeah.
that the teacher is utilizing for like a mentor text. So
Okay.
that would be how it's done, or it's done through social studies. So like in
Okay.
fourth grade, it's more covered through social studies. But when you look at the younger grades, it's more through a read aloud and classroom discussion, like an interactive read aloud.
So that, then those books would just be kind of like.
Like we purchased a whole bunch of classroom sets of diverse books for all the teachers at Parkway.
Yeah.
So they had a collection to pull for read alouds to use throughout the school year.
So I've essentially had to reach out to my kids' teachers to find out if and when and how they're teaching around some of the things that like I value and find important. So that makes me think that maybe there's a connection that we're thinking like teachers could be sharing out, like this is how we are teaching on some of these things, or when they're doing something cool, we could highlight it.
No,
Okay, but yeah, thank you. I just wanted, that was what I needed to
that's-
say.
Karen, Chris,
really good.
over there, any further questions, thoughts?
I guess just going back to the extraordinarily unfortunate situation that happened with the TikTok. I appreciated you absolutely, we want to be educating our students and educating our parents about how to promote appropriate social media use. And also, I think we're all incredibly thankful that there's a way for those things to be tracked and a way for responses to be had. And then also, how are we ensuring that, you know, things that happen in that way, you know, what are the layers of reporting available? So that we can continue to promote that as well. Like, yes, teach our kids how to be responsible social media residents. And also that's not just how do you behave in social media, but how do you also then react and respond and report if that's what it has to be happening.
Yes, I mean, I would say responding around this idea of seeing something and saying something is important. And especially I think in the adolescent world, there is a propensity to try to protect your peers, right? And I want to be, you know, I want to honor the fact that that also is part of their world right now. One of the things that I would say is really clear is that the way that they can report their anonymous, the tool that's online is a way that they can report without having to come to the office and report it, right?
That's the safety reporting form that you
Yeah,
link.
yeah. And so there's, you know, a tool for that. In terms of typically, you know, making sure that when we have situations that arise, that we are honoring and telling kids how important it was and how proud we are of them for making those reports. And like a lot of that is through just like the honoring of the fact that they have done the right thing, right? And really making sure that parents understand that as well. In addition to that, like layers of reporting, so some of the things that we use as tools here, just so that there's clarity around that for our families as well, is both Leon Williams and myself have been trained in the Department of Justice on threat assessment tools. So those threat assessment tools are used when we encounter that. So it isn't just like you're gonna come to the office and we're gonna ask a couple questions. There's a protocol that is followed to try to assess risk. And in this case, for example, even though that this took place outside of school, there was intervention prior to it coming to school. We still went through that risk assessment and looked at intervention plans to support students, right? And we know that one of the key ways of bringing students into the fold so that they do not feel ostracized, because that's often what has happened when there are acts of violence in a school community, is making sure that our students feel a part of. So it goes back to SEL learning, making sure that students have adults who they know they can go to and trust, and building that capacity within our school environment. So they do feel comfortable letting us know when something isn't right.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Ms. Martin, anyone else online? Okay, thank you very much, Anna. Moving on to item 4B, academic calendars for 25, 26, and 26, 27.
All right, as part of our work in making sure that we're meeting the instructional minutes of Wisconsin DPI and that we are aligning ourselves with our partner districts around our spring breaks, and so that there's alignment for families who have students who are also at Nicolay. I've been working in collaboration with Nicolay, Mapledale, Indian Hill, and Fox Point Bayside to work on aligning our calendars. The goal of the calendar work is to have 2 years worth of calendars approved at a time. I wanted to bring this to the board as a first draft with the goal of having you review it, ask questions, and then I will be bringing it back in our second meeting of December so that we can work towards approval, which is in alignment with our partner districts and their work with their boards respectively.
So my understanding is, you would have the best sense, Danielle, we've never approved 2 calendar years at a time, right? You guys only did one at a time, yeah. So I love the idea of getting a year ahead. This is what our partner districts do as well.
That is correct, and of course, these calendars can then be amended if needed. The board has the ability to amend if there are things that we, would see in there that need to be altered, but we would try to hold to those and really make sure that those dates are well communicated and front facing for our families too, so they can plan.
So it's like a rolling 2-year approval. Every year we'll reapprove what we already approved and then add a second year.
You got it. Yes.
Beautiful. Questions, Danielle?
Just for when you bring it back, I think last year, maybe Jenica, you created the keys and stuff, and it was really nice to see the number of PD days and the number of that was nice. And then can I assume then that all breaks will actually be the same as Fox Point, Mapledale, Nicolay? Were you successful in aligning?
Well, our PD days.
Not PD,
right?
I think you're just trying to align
Yeah,
spring break.
yes.
Winter break.
Yeah, winter break, a spring break, the fall break over the Thanksgiving period is also the same. I did try to align we did try to work to an alignment and on as many of our PDA days as possible.
Oh, cool.
And so one of the key pieces to note in here too is you see the S column, the T column, so you can see the number of days for students, the number of days for teachers.
Oh, okay.
So,
I see, so 12 days.
Yep, so there's some pretty clear alignment there, and then at the bottom, there's a calculation of the minutes and the requirements that are there for the state. So, making sure, and it really is, there's a different requirement for elementary than there is for middle school. Once students hit that 7th and 8th grade, we have to meet that higher threshold of instructional minutes, so Glen Hills has to be at that higher level.
And it looks like you're letting go of a rolling start, different grades starting, or as staggered. So first day of school for all students, September 2nd. Yeah, staggered start, thank you.
That would be something I would want to talk with our team about. I know like the second is the official first start of the school day. We may want to look at doing a rolling start
Oh, okay.
for some of our students, just to make sure we get them in and going quickly, but we do also have to be cognizant of instructional minutes. as well.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Anyone else? Karen? Chris? Okay, so this will come back to us at the next meeting for a possible vote.
That is correct. I also want to note that I had the opportunity to look through the calendar with the association here as well, and just receive feedback from our association reps on it as well, from both Parkway and Glen Hills. Some things to note in here is conferences were always up adjacent to the fall break in November. However, we did move conferences up, and that is strategic to help parents, particularly at the middle school, understand where their students are situated academically. So there's time to intervene before the close of the trimester, so that we can provide more support and clarity for our families.
Awesome.
Those are some noted changes.
I like it. All right. Moving on. Thank you, Anna. Thanks for getting ahead of the curve on this and giving us a chance to look at it before it's up for a vote. That's very, very helpful. On to item 4C, staff changes.
Okay, so agenda item would be a hire and resignation of special education paraprofessionals. So policy 4120 states the board shall approve the employment and fix a compensation and establish a term of employment for each support staff member employed in our district. In accordance with this policy, it is recommended that the board approve the hiring of Janelle Miserelli. I'm saying her name correctly. Yeah. All right, for the part-time special education paraprofessional position following the terms of the offer letter that was submitted to the board. And then also school board policy 4140 indicates that the superintendent may act on behalf of the board to accept the resignation of support staff. However, I'm seeking board approval of Stephanie Shalinsky's resignation to be effective as of December 13th, 2024. Her resignation will require potentially posting and hiring to fill an already existing special education paraprofessional position as she leaves Parkway.
Okay, let's start with the hire. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the hiring of Janelle Miserelli for the special education paraprofessional position at Glen Hills. Second.
All right, we've got documents attached. Any discussion, Katie? Danielle? Lauren?
I'm so sorry. I just want to clarify. So we're hiring a part-time person, but they're not replacing the individual who is resigning?
It's two, we would have Glen Hills last board meeting, you approved the
Yes.
opening of a part-time position at Glen Hills. That's what this hire is for.
Okay.
The resignation came after.
And that's okay. I just conflated
Separate.
them in my head, so then I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the Janelle Miserelli hire is for the new position that we approved last year for that special education.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions or comments? All right, there is a motion to approve the hire of Janelle Miserelli for the special education paraprofessional position at Glen Hills. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Welcome, Ms. Miserelli. All right, and next.
I will move to approve the resignation of Stephanie Shalinsky as a special education paraprofessional at Parkway.
Second.
Any discussion? Katie? Chris, Karen, Danielle, Carla? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you for the clarity in the information we are receiving about hires and resignations. It is very helpful and makes our board work much easier. All right. Standing category 5 on equitable stewardship in our agenda. We have no items for discussion on that pillar. Moving on to item 6A, district scorecard.
All right, so in August of 2024, the board was presented with the district scorecard as a means of transparency in our collective work to achieve the district's 5-year strategic plan. So this would be a very high level view of how our district is performing in each of our pillared areas. I have had the opportunity to look at some of the feedback that you provided at that time. Made some adjustments just in my conversations with the administrative team. I would like to, because we're in our first year of our strategic plan, to try to pull as much baseline data in as possible and get this posted to our district's website as a means of sharing our ongoing progress with our larger community. So I have attached it in our documents and just would like you to have the opportunity to discuss and have any additional feedback around that, be at the center of our discussion around this item.
Everything okay?
I don't know.
Is it okay if we continue or would you like us to? Okay, let's continue. All right, I'm gonna put on a timer for 6 minutes. How's that?
That sounds good.
Okay.
I do have several questions.
Yes, we'll start with you, Chris.
Okay, no, I just.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I tend to, like more stuff and I realize this might not be the place for more stuff. But it seems like you've done a lot of data gathering in other places and this might be a good place to put it. Because I wondered about just relying so much on just the state test. And I wanted to see, is the state test, I wonder if there was a reason you chose the state test versus STAR that tests more students.
I would say STAR test the same number of students. I mean, we're still, unless students are qualifying to take the DLM, they're taking our STAR tests within our school, and just like they're taking the forward test.
Right, but forward doesn't start till 3rd grade, I think.
I got you, which is part of the reason why, and I understand the question better now. We wanted to take a look at, if you look at the data that Jenica presented around the forward test and the STAR test, they're very similar, right? And so we looked at that external measure because it's also on our external report card.
Got it.
But we did pull in the early literacy screening as a measure because we did have a conversation as an administrative team about the fact that we do have to have something in place. And we know that early literacy is a marker for us. And so we will be having all of those Ames Web assessments that are going to be coming through as part of Act 20 that we would pull our baseline data from. Does that make sense? A little bit more? Yeah. I get what you're saying though.
It does, thanks. And
Yeah.
I wondered about something also maybe non-testing since we were looking at whole child. And I know you have the student life assessment. Is that a good place to put our very nice attendance data? Or is that a place to put our very nice extracurricular data?
Yeah, that's what you just made me think of, like
So
participation.
just wondering.
I think those are both really good highlight points of our district, and I do think there's some merit to that, and I would like to discuss that and with the team.
Yeah.
I know the student life ed survey does get into some of the components around like, do I feel like there's like things that meet my needs, do I feel like I belong? Those kind of questions are a part of that we may need to extract. Another point though is that the student life and school survey only would be given to students grades 3rd and up, just because of being able to understand and take the survey, right? So that's a really excellent point to pull in attendance data and or, right, the data about extracurricular activities.
And then if I could.
Yeah, please
One
keep
more,
going.
when you look, can I change pillars? Is
Yeah,
that
go
okay?
ahead, go ahead.
When we look at the one about exceptional staff, exceptional leadership, the data that is picked addresses most of it, but it doesn't address the growth in teaching and culturally responsive practices.
Right.
And I wonder if there's a way to do some, this many people completed this, or increase their score on this? I don't have the answer, but I just wanted to
Yeah.
raise it for a point of discussion.
It is a point of discussion, and I don't know that as a team, we've been able to land on that. We talked a lot about representation, we moved away from that component of things. Some of that is, we looked at even student education or teacher education, like too, that also has some barriers, right? For teachers who have different stages or seasons of their lives that are going on that prohibit them from being able to engage. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're growing in those areas, right? It's very hard to, I haven't quite determined how to go after that. It's something I could throw out to other superintendents and see whether or not they have any measures or markers for that. Thanks.
Or do you capture that through student growth?
Any questions about? Danielle?
Okay, yeah, just a few, so, for the surveys, like, what is a student life at school survey, are you gonna pull out a question, is that what you said, and then, or like, is it an overall score, like, how does?
There's an overall score that is pulled out of a student survey. So the student survey will, like, as a board and as an administrative team and as teachers, will be able to look at each question, line item, go at it. The total score will be a combination of several questions that we think get at our pillar areas. So in the work with school perceptions was really looking at how do we capture empowerment for students and voice? How do we capture a sense of belonging and connectedness? Because those are also part of our strategic plan. So they have, and I don't have it in front of me right now, but they have like different areas of the survey that were directly tied to our strategic plan that we would pull that life at school score from. That would also give us metrics on how we compare to other districts that are like ours.
Okay, so then the actual category wouldn't tell me that, if I'm looking like at a number and it's like 4 out of 5, is like that the information that's gonna be in that baseline box?
Yeah, in the baseline box, you're not gonna receive, like, so in the community engagement survey, you see that 3.6 out of 5, right?
Right, and I'm like, what does that mean?
Right, but what the goal of this would be a very high level component of being able to say, if it's 3.6 out of 5 this year, what we wanna see is an incremental growth over time towards our 5-year plan. That's the aim behind it.
Okay, so I think that maybe then some demarcation, some explainer on this scorecard of like what the numbers represent and what our goal is
A key.
would help. A key, yeah, exactly. Yeah, just to help better understand, and then the equitable, exceptional staff, exceptional leadership. There's nothing that also speaks to leadership. I don't know what that would look like, but like looking at admin or even looking at board, I don't know, but I just don't see anything around leadership.
And there may be some questions, there's some questions within the staff engagement survey that could probably be ferreted out in the sense that like ask about
Like
whether
I
or
can
not.
go to my
I can
supervisor.
go to my supervisor, I feel like my voice is valued, some of those components, yeah.
And there might be something in the family engagement survey too that
Yes.
goes into that, right? How
Yep.
the community feels
Yeah.
about the board and about
So I
the
might just-
superintendent.
Yeah, something like that.
Yep, that's a great point, thank you.
And then equitable stewardship, okay, so fund out bond rating. So 10-year capital and maintenance plan, what will be the parameters for judging that?
I think that judging on that would be the prioritization, once we lock in that prioritization around projects, like how many of those projects have been taken care of and what has been deferred, right?
Okay.
Like,
So then a key or an explainer for that.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, I have many of those same questions.
Hey,
Shocking.
on empowered community, I wondered. Not a strong feeling at all, just wondering what it would look like to track. And if it's possible to track how many caregivers participate in conferences. Like as a way to get a look at family engagement with student learning.
That would be fairly easy to track.
It's just like this weird little single data point that I often think about. Are
Yeah.
families showing up for conferences? Because it's a really clean, small moment that you can track how many caregivers are showing up. are, you know, because I mean, there's a lot of reasons people do and don't, but it's just one little lens that I'm always curious about.
So I guess one of the metrics that I would be looking at or thinking, wondering that I would have around that is it could help us understand what barriers are to teachers engaging at that particular point, but are there other ways that those families engage at different points for different reasons, right?
Right.
And is that the point that we want to prioritize?
Well, I admit what I was thinking is tracking other family engagement is harder.
It is.
But in an ideal, you're tracking touches. How many times have I been contacted by families, by caregivers? You know, to me, that's what, when you think about like Title I engagement, that's that effort, right? Like to get families speaking into the school buildings is this really important aspect of engagement. And I'm curious whether these two data points would capture that and whether there's a way to capture it.
So I will say that one of the ideas around the family engagement survey is to have it run in March, so we can have stations set up during parent-teacher conferences to elicit better response to it. So that was an intentional move that.
Measuring response to it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
With the survey.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I do wonder about that too, about, like, can we get more families to respond, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's all I
Yeah,
was
interesting
thinking.
points though. I hear what you're saying, because I feel like we have parents who engage in many different ways. Parent-teacher conferences are a very traditional way, right?
Right.
And so in a very important way, right?
Yeah. But often that information is coming from the teacher to the parent.
Yeah.
So when I think about engagement that supports student learning, I think, you guys know what I'm gonna say, right? Like I think about a parent calling in or a grandpa or whatever to say, listen, Jill's gonna have a tough day today. These things happened in our family and it's gonna be a bad day. Can you get extra support for her? Or, Jill's having a hard time with this assignment. That kind of engagement that creates that, like family school. Oh, it died. Oh, it's back. Family school collaboration to support learning. I'm thinking about like what engagement looks like that supports learning, not volunteering, all those other things that are important, but thinking specifically about how engagement supports student growth. Yeah.
Well, I think there's some questions on the family engagement survey that you could pull out that speak to that. Like, I feel like my voice is like valued or heard. I feel like I can connect with my teacher. Like, you're talking about communication. Do I feel like I can communicate directly or receive communication?
One of the questions on the survey that I know is there, because Kelly and I had an opportunity to look at it, as the administrative team looked at it, is I know how my student is performing in school, so like there's some really key questions around whether or not that communication is clear. In terms of how students are actually learning versus,
Yeah.
But this looks great.
Yeah.
Love it. Katie, anything to add?
Just to your point, I would have a hard time moving, especially for the middle school conference we've had. Cause after like 5th grade, it becomes a lot more complicated. You're kind of deciding which teachers you want to talk to.
Yeah.
It probably for the elementary school work okay, where they're more or less mandatory, at least for that first the fall one. But it gets really complicated after that. I personally didn't do conferences this year.
Yeah.
My kids they're doing well. I'm in touch with the teachers I need to be in touch with.
Yep.
So I didn't feel like I needed to have that touch. So on then I would be an uninvolved parent if we're using that as a touch point, whereas like, I don't feel like I'm uninvolved.
Yeah, I don't think there would be judgment in the data.
Well, I know.
There is judgment. It would be,
I would question how accurate it gets once you get to middle school.
Fair enough.
I have one more question. I'm so sorry.
Quick, we're well over 6 minutes.
Okay, scores. I'm thinking about scorecard versus dashboard, and I know some districts have like a dashboard. And I'm wondering if, like, is this our version of like, this is all the data we're gonna put out on our website versus like some of the other things we talked about highlighting, like attendance or participation activities or things, whether those could exist in a separate space that we're not like scoring or I don't know. I'll put it in the fridge. We can talk about it more later, but I just.
Are you talking about like more of a live dashboard?
Yeah.
Okay. No, we have not talked about a live dashboard, partly because I would be not really, I mean, I think there may be some tools that we can use to do that, but I think what we were looking at is looking at the specific growth towards a strategic plan.
Okay,
I think some of those other markers, some of the tools that I've seen used is like featuring a newsletter, like, did you know? This is our, percentage
Okay.
rate. So
Yeah.
other ways of incorporating that, if we wanted to explore a dashboard, I think we would probably have to look at some outside tools and resources
maybe down the line.
as an addendum to our our current website.
Okay, I just wanted clarity in my head.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else about the scorecard? All right, I hope that's helpful at some level.
It is.
Get some feedback from
It
us.
is, it is.
All right, on to resolution calendar. Which
So it's
Danielle.
not in board docs. And I emailed it to everybody, so maybe we could throw it. Did you get it, Diane, or not?
Did, but now this is happening.
That's
Anyone else? Gotta sign in.
Of course it logged you out, because why wouldn't it? Ooh, and I apologize to everyone for how long this meeting is going, but
It was a lot of.
it was a lot and.
Only 8:30, Carla. That's
8:40.
nothing.
I
40,
know,
that's
but
nothing.
We're gonna let Diane.
Is this just our informational or are we
Yes.
voting on something?
No,
Oh, okay.
no, no.
Okay, so if this is just informational, then I can just, while she's doing that, do you want me to talk about this?
There you go.
Oh, okay, so I created a draft board resolution calendar. I don't know that it's wholly inclusive, but this is all the sort of things I could find that I thought we might be interested in highlighting. The things that are in bold are ones that we have already recognized or done. The others are just out there as potential that I thought, we could discuss. So that's it.
Thank you for making this calendar.
Yeah, it's really.
That's fun.
And I think
I think what we've discussed, and I don't even remember who I've talked with about what. But what we've talked about is getting a calendar like this in place, basically, to provide a small roadmap for Anna and school staff. In an ideal world, we would pass the resolutions in the prior month so that then they would be queued up and in place. So if there was like the Autism Awareness Month, if we chose to do that, we would pass it in March. Then Anna would be able to inform staff. And if we have this calendar in place, she would also be building ahead of time, working with Jenica and all our staff to put together those resource boxes, basically, right? So that would all be in place ahead of time, just a way to normalize and to make it part of our curriculum ahead of time instead of scrambling and making it less performative then.
So,
Right.
actually, I had
Which had been my goal of this all along, so it's just taken.
Okay, Karen?
I had a question because I'm wondering, and this is just a lack of understanding of resolutions, but is there a reason that resolutions only live for a year? I mean, can we pass a resolution that's more permanent or more longitudinal so that we don't need to, so it does become a consistent aspect of just what we're doing and an integrated component of how the district is approaching education?
My perspective on it is that it takes constant vigilance. That just tends to be my model, that I like being reminded every year and being refocused on it. I don't know, can resolutions just live ad nauseum? You could.
Do you know?
Maybe I could look into it. I mean, I think it's an interesting idea, and then you would build it into the board calendar more so, like instead of having a separate resolution calendar, it would live and.
It would be the district calendar.
It would be
more
great.
like-
I mean,
On the
I guess because I'm
district
looking,
calendar.
and here's the thing, like, I'm not trying to suggest that any one of these has higher priority over another, right? But it looks to me right now, as though, for instance, in May, are we asking for each one of these items to be high value, like, is this proposal where we pick one a year? I guess.
No,
I have
last year we did 3 in May. We did AAPI, we did mental health, and we did Jewish American Heritage in the same breath of, same agenda piece. Talked about each of them separately. So I think we might get in the habit of not reading them out, you know, every time. It's like talking about them and highlighting but, or even consent
Or just
agenda.
preview, I get, or,
if
well,
it's
no,
the
because
month
I
before.
think highlighting them and saying, but I mean. I'm not trying to diminish the benefit of a resolution.
Yeah.
I
of
wanna make
course.
sure that what we're doing is not asking. And I think it's the same train, right? Not asking for significant lift.
Last minute
All
lift.
at the last minute.
Yes,
Like, this is-
absolutely.
If we want it to be meaningful and truly integrated and possibly even integrated across the entire school year with like understanding how to do this, then.
I mean, hypothetically, you could pass every single resolution in August. You could pass a single resolution declaring the following celebrations, right? It wouldn't look like a stack on our board page, but it would map out in August, for instance, what our expectations are for what we hope will be integrated into curriculum, and that would give Anna and team the roadmap ahead. It's an interesting idea too.
I'd rather pass a resolution in August that says like more around our plan to honor the various things, but I actually, I don't know about that because I think I've learned a lot drafting these resolutions, and I think the language and the data changes.
Yeah.
You know, we highlight the foundation, but then we also highlight statistics for like this, for suicide,
prevention, I've
mental
updated,
health.
yeah.
So I think as the data changes, it's important for us to stay on top of that, but I think, I don't know, maybe there's.
What's your thought, Hannah?
She thinks it's almost 9:00.
Fair enough.
No,
Am I reading your mind?
I think the goal and the impact around this is to have integrated exposure and, not even just exposure, integration. Of the fact that there are multiple perspectives and multiple representations within our school community and within our society and within our greater Milwaukee community. And the goal of that work is to have that translate into what's happening with kids in classrooms, right? And so to me, I think in many ways, I feel like the acknowledgement of the board helps support our teachers in feeling like they have the ability to move forward in this work.
Like they're safe.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Role modeling. too,
right.
we're gonna learn.
I think though that the other part of this would be also to say like where a question that I would ask and something that I've thought a lot about is that if we are not just relying on tokenism and monthly celebrations, which is a very low level of introduction, like how do we recognize where these things are taught across our curriculum K-8? And so that we're acknowledging where those touch points are and highlighting the work that's actually happening in the classroom, rather than saying like, I want to move it into this space only, because there are ways in which this happens all year round and should be happening all year round, right? So then I wonder if as we frame the declaration, is it less about the month in which it happens, or is it more about the fact that it happens? And how are we looking at those components and how are we auditing essentially our current curriculum for teaching around that?
Which I feel like we kind of modeled with Native American Heritage Month, where it's like, this is what we're doing, but these are our goals for making it not a token.
Yeah.
So I have another question, and again, kind of a lack of understanding, but then I would almost wonder if there would be a benefit of exploring in the future a way to empower students to develop the resolutions, to pull out of the curriculum where they've learned and what they've learned, so that they could perform that and bring forward the resolutions, which would be really a meaningful way to present their knowledge and their content understanding. And also an incredible experience, right? For them to learn how to do something that I haven't done yet.
Or work with a board member, like if we went back to having a student board representative, so whatever month they're in, they.
Yeah, I mean, I would
know
really
what
want
you're
to
saying.
make sure that it was as flexible as possible because I think some board members have more flexibility and availability for that than others, but I guess I would wonder if maybe that's another way to flip it, to make it a meaningful representation. And again, this is just an idea that's growing out of this moment, but that might be a really great way for then us to be able to see what they're learning.
Yeah.
And you might want more than one student too.
Oh, okay, of
Because
course,
everyone's
yes.
experience might be a little different, so having like a.
Or like,
Like a cohort.
like the fourth graders do their presentation or whatever.
Yeah, and that. From a very practical standpoint, that would be providing students, I think, with a template and an outline to write a resolution would be something that we could. Like the board could help work and support, right? I do think like there's the ability for students to read or record that resolution during the school day, so it doesn't
Yeah.
require them to be present at a
Right.
meeting in the evening. Or their families to get them here, so there's a lot of points of accessibility around that.
Good. Yeah, video.
So where does this leave us?
I don't know.
I think the calendar is awesome. I mean, it brings
Yeah.
forward a lot of good information.
I'm wondering if this may not be a thinking point or a charge for equity, potentially for a charter for that work.
Yeah.
Or if we
How
want this to
so?
be board-led work.
Well, I'll let you talk about it in your
Yeah,
meeting with the
yeah.
leaders.
Yeah.
When you have that.
That the equity committee could put together a calendar, propose the drafts, work with the students.
Yeah, or
On these
find a
resolutions.
way to make it about family or community engagement on these things too, but.
All right, for
Okay.
further discussion then.
Yeah.
Down the road. Thank you for putting this together, Danielle. It also, this calendar is nice for me because it shows me, we have done a lot of work to highlight diversity in our community and I think you're right, Anna, and thanks for the reminder. It does create for people who might otherwise feel uncomfortable or unsafe coming out about topics. We are offering our support when we pass these. That's pretty powerful. It's very cool. Thank you. Oh, item 7A, board meeting debrief.
Good work, good night.
I'll just share with the administration that I already shared with the board. I feel like we just need to be upfront forward. And when you guys are presenting, we are live processing data consumers. And so while apparently we will, I guess maybe it would be a good conversation to have around like, how do we approach questions and how, because obviously we are not gonna be able to hold them all. Like that just isn't a practice that we're able to engage in as much as, so that's just not what we're living up to. So I think we need to accept our reality.
I think my takeaway was there was too much on this agenda. It was just a lot. And
I would agree with that. I think, part of what I will be looking at, for board feedback from you on an individual level as well, just so and I'll post that in my weekly update to you, is just thinking about what data was important, how was the presentation of it helpful, what was not helpful, so that we can work on refining this. This is the first time we've brought it as a trimester.
Yeah.
I know I had initially we had talked about like a monthly basis of bringing stuff forward, so it's coming more regularly. So there's different ways to approach the work around that. I think it's really important that you understand how our students are moving and growing and the work that's being done at the schools to support that. But this was a big chew and it was our first time doing it, so I appreciate everyone's patience and grace and our team for sticking around and doing the work.
I appreciate your patience, team, for tolerating all our many questions. But I think it is really exciting for us to be getting data and really clear presentations of what's going on, hearing from principals, hearing from each of you. It's really positive for me. And I guess what I want to say in my debrief right now, what I'm feeling is like a lot of humble gratitude for being at this table with each of you, because you each bring like a really different perspective than mine. You ask questions, raise issues that I wouldn't think of. And so I'm just, I'm really grateful to be in the presence of so much brain power.
I just wanted to make the suggestion that we consider doing a data workshop.
Oh, right.
So like maybe prior to the next presentation, we do something where you can dive in and teach us more about the data so that it'll get cleaner and. That's it.
Oh, Corin and I are going to the listening session with Tony Evers next week. So if anyone has thoughts you want to share, things that you really want us to say.
Or do you want to come with us?
Yes, community members can sign up to go to the Tony Evers listening session. I think they're going to be doing breakout groups, so that's going to be cool. If you're looking for ways to be present and normalize board members in the coming month, Saturday the
14th, there's a lot going on. That's next Saturday. Secret Gift Shop is a volunteer opportunity. Steam Fair at Glen Hills, so,
This Friday is a school-wide meeting at Parkway.
oh, what time is
It's
that?
at 2 o'clock usually, or get there at 2 and it'll happen shortly after that.
I haven't been to
And
one.
I still wanted to push my suggestion, which I can email to Dr. Smith, that on her caregiver calendar, she puts like times and a notation that like parents are welcome to attend, if they are, because Mr. Kruger said that at the last meeting, but that information isn't on the calendar for caregivers.
Next Tuesday, there's the joint area. Two of the middle schools, I don't think it's all three, at Nicolay.
Oh, that's right, the
There's
big
this
band concert.
concert. Well, so while you guys are hanging out with Tony Evers, I'm gonna be over there listening to the 7th and 8th
Awesome.
grade bands.
I'll be at the high school concert Wednesday.
Yes.
With regards to the Secret Santa on the calendar, there was no time.
It's called Secret
listed.
Gift Shop, it's not a Santa.
It's a-
Just to clarify. Gift shop.
No sense.
There is no time on the calendar, so
Oh.
if that is.
It's in the morning. I
It
think the
overlaps with
PTO
the
probably
student
has a
fair.
sign up.
Yeah.
We can
my
add
girls
it.
signed up to volunteer. I don't remember when though.
We can share that.
And then our next meeting is December 18th. Ooh. Anything else? All that's left is the last item on our agenda.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. That's our longest meeting in a very long time.
Well, and I don't, I guess not because we were off topic or.